All right. We're
Are we
live.
live? Oh my goodness.
We're live.
I should probably tweet.
Why my camera suddenly move? That's funny.
I should probably tell my mother where to find me on the TV.
Mom, I'm on the TV. Blurry. There we go. I need a ring light.
It's so hard to have the Twitch up and then also
Under a work. Because we're not officially in the episode yet, Mickey. Here's a work safe cuss something British. Oh man. Sod off, you bloody wanker.
I guess.
Yeah. What's up, everyone? We're doing a little bit of a casual
We're-
open before we start the real episode.
What do they call that? The green room?
Yeah, we're in the
we're-
green room right now, the digital green room, waiting for people to say hello and all of that kind of stuff.
So
We're gonna
how
let
am
you Oh, go ahead.
How am I supposed to pop out this chat?
There's a little cog. There's a cog. And I think it says pop out chat. You might need to go to switch to non-mod settings, by the way. My mod stand.
I don't think I'm in mod settings. And I'm on the website. I'm not in the Twitch app.
Yeah, I mean the Twitch website, my friend.
Here we go. Here we go. I wonder if I can keep the chat up while I close the window.
Yes.
Maybe I don't want to.
Yeah, it popped out for me in a separate window and then I just minimized the Twitch window.
You minimize the Twitch window?
Yeah.
Okay, I see chat. Hello, everyone. Can I get a channel points count from everyone? I'm at 2.3 thousand.
I'm at 2.3 million.
Utter a work safe cuss. A bad deck tech. That's good. And highlight my message. That's bad. It's worse than a foil. Hey everyone. Thanks for stopping by. How's everyone's day been? You're gonna see us count off our usual recording process. You'll see how we get synced up for Tanner. Shane, what are you drinking?
Let's see, what is this? This is a new beer I've never had before. It's hold on, let me look at my Drizzly order. I get everything from Drizzly now.
My Drizzly order.
I freaking love Drizzly. It saves, I mean, it's like, so I get to tip somebody for driving alcohol to me. And two, it saves me time and exposure to the Corona. Is that like, I feel guilty. This is Ratio Sparks Fly Juicy IPA. It's pretty good.
Nice. I'm going with just a glass of water for this one because I want to be sharp, everybody.
Drizzly sponsorship sounds really good.
Yeah, Drizzly, hit us up. I know someone's in there.
Oh,
We just
whoa.
lost Stan.
Oh my gosh. We're losing people. We've lost Dave and Stan. So this evening, this is unusual. We don't usually lose. I also have to remember to restart the backup
Yeah.
when Stan
So
rejoins.
if we lose people in the middle of this, you guys will see some
Blue
interesting
cheese.
stuff happen because we just continue to record
There we go.
whenever we lose people, and so then we have to resync, and there's some weird stuff going on.
That was entirely my fault. I just hit the X at the top of the corner.
My man hitting the X.
Was that?
Blue cheese, thanks for the $10. So we the donations. What we figured is it's going to be kind of annoying. Yeah, Bear Spiders, you can listen. This will probably answer your question. So we cannot engage with chat as regularly throughout the episode because it will make actually making the real episode a real bear.
2 for 2.
So what we're gonna do is like every 15 decks. We'll probably pop into the chat via text more than we will via voice. But every 15 decks we'll take a break. We'll read off people who have donated. We'll thank people who have donated to Feeding America. We'll probably answer any questions that we couldn't answer via chat, do a little engagement, and that'll make it easy for our editor to cut that kind of content out and make the episode more contiguous. So that's my thought process there.
Contiguous.
Yeah, if somebody asks a question that is very, very timely
about the
with
deck,
what
yeah.
we're talking about the deck, then we might bring it up. But keep in mind, the Twitch chat, we're going to go through 100 decks today, as you might have heard, and we're going to try to do it in about 2.5 hours. And so we might not be able to stop too much.
I mean,
let's
some
see how
of the
fast
some
it
of the
goes.
some of the decks are bad.
Yeah, or short.
Or I would argue most of these decks are bad. Humans,
Yeah, terrible.
Tron, get out of here.
Y'all, how many people do we have? We got 26 viewers ish, 26, 30.
I
love
say
it.
45. I say 50.
Man, holy smokes! I'm really building my channel. You all know I am a Twitch affiliate. Okay, I'm a professional streamer. So you're all making it a lot easier for me. I'm not a professional streamer.
Yeah, and the other thing that I wanted to tell you guys really quickly, first off, thanks for donations as people are sending them in, because it's really just so nice and such a reminder of what a great community everybody is. The one thing I wanted to explain was about the decks is we are not going to do 100 decks in order from 100 to 1 as a rating.
Yeah.
We have done top 25
Yeah.
as a rating, and then we are doing 75 random decks before that. So the first 2/3 of the show will be us talking about the ones that didn't make it into our top 25, and then we're going to spend some good time on the ones that did make it in the top 25.
Yeah. And the way we did our top 25 is we each made our own top 25 and then in rank order. And then I did some math and some such to consolidate that. And so we have our aggregate top 25, the official objective top 25.
Yeah. Other animal, we totally did just try. We were going to do alphabetical, and then we decided to do random instead of the non top 25 stuff.
You might be surprised. Is it Phoenix Falls, Dom?
Backpacks on backpacks, Blue Cheese.
The other thing to note is that before we kick this thing off, is that Stan and I, did you tell him that Stan and I do not know the order of the top 25?
Oh, yes.
Only Shane knows the order of the top 25 because we did a ranked voting system where Shane's the only one who knows the results.
Yeah. So I know the results of the top 25. The other two guys only know what their top 25 is. So can I explain what's going on from the beginning?
Hey,
Kyle, dang,
Ben,
$50.
Ben, we will explain it again on the show for sure in context. Oh, joking. Okay.
Man, Shane, your Twitch is going off right now.
This is great. Aspiring Spike, he did get the host. He says he's playing. Fortunately for him, unfortunately for us, he has his regular D&D. I believe he plays Saturday and Monday.
Oh wow.
So
I like that.
That's why we can never record Monday, our recording day, with him because he plays D&D. But anyway, he said that he would host us. What did I just do? Oh, wow, that's crazy.
See you, Everett. Thank you for stopping by.
Everett, thanks, my friend. Everett, an unofficial fourth host. We appreciate you. Congratulations on your finals finish in the challenge.
Yeah, way to go.
Yeah.
Thanks for the sub, V-Share. Veshare. Okay.
I like V-Share.
I mean, it's not actually phonetically correct. Man,
I like sharing any letter.
This is popping
A-share,
off.
B-share.
I like the green room for a minute. We can just see who's showing up. How many people do you see in the chat, y'all?
Twitch says 77 people.
My goodness.
Dave was like, "We're gonna get 5 tops," and I said, "No."
Well,
Are there 77? I can't tell.
Hey, our favorite Italian. Hey, Ryan is here. Hi, Ryan.
Hey, Ryan. So yeah, the question was asked earlier about my lack of beard. I did have a beard. I trimmed it off so that masks were a little bit better fitting during this awful time that we all have to deal with. So sorry to be a downer, but that's why I don't have a beard. I kind of hate it. I can see my like lantern jaw.
Lantern.
Yeah, but that lantern keeps the light on in the darkness.
Shines bright.
Okay. So I mean it's 7:35 Central. 7:35.
Let's do it.
Want to fire it? Okay.
Time to light
so
this candle. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, hold on. Yeah, so what we do, you're gonna see it live. You're gonna see it live. We're gonna send it. So here's how we're gonna count. We have to count down for our. We have a backup going. We have a method. Here's our live synchronization for Audacity local recordings. 7, 6, 5, click. 3.
Wait, I screwed it up.
No. Oh man, we'll do it live.
Yeah, let's
do it live.
All right, one more time.
I was saying hi to Zanman.
Let's turn my notifications off. Hold on, before we get going. Why is Mickey saying Nikki? Oh, well, he's like 15 seconds behind. So 7, 6, 5, click. 3, 2, 1. Recording. All right, remote is go. Local is go. Oh man.
I'm not clipping. Sound
everyone's levels look good.
Fantastic.
Yep. It's a Saturday night. I didn't even get to shower today. I thought I'd be less tired, but here we are.
So Tanner, editor Tanner, our faithful editor, we're going to try to do this as good as possible, as normal as possible, and then we'll have nice breaks every 15 decks to shout people out, thank people for their donations, like Kiefer, who just gave 5. We appreciate you. But enjoy this one, my friend.
Hopefully we won't have to do as many restarts and stuff because we're going live. So we have an audience to please now.
Oh, I gotta get the ad plug. Donate to Feeding America. Donate to Feeding America. Okay, and then where'd that link go, Stan? In announcements.
We got one in announcements. I tweeted it as well. Just go over to Twitter.
Okay, hold on. And then MTG bot. Okay,
Grant.
Just
we're
roll
go
with it
for a while.
Just roll with it. Just go, Stan.
I can start. All right, cool. Hello and welcome to episode. Wait, which one is this again?
100, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, it's just so unceremonious. I forget. Episode 100 of the Dive Down, a Magic the Gathering podcast for the casual spike, focused on the latest decks, trends, and strategies. Wait, in what formats do we usually talk about?
Modern and Pioneer.
That's right.
Those are good formats.
They're pretty good. My name is Stanislav here in Chicago, and with me on the line from Denver, Colorado, it's the one and only Shane Beeps.
Stanislav, I've got so many windows open right now. I've got so many new sources of information. It's a high stress, high energy moment right now. I'm hyped for this.
My computer has never used so much RAM. All of my RAM is being used.
We're drowning in RAM over here. The bits are gone.
Also with us, the Godfather, Dave Harbarger.
Guys, I wanted to record on a Saturday night because I thought I would be better rested than a Monday night and would be a little more fun. But I was with my kids all day today. I didn't even get to shower. I'm wearing the same clothes as yesterday. The people in Twitch see me in my just dishevelment right now. But I'm ready here to deliver some quality content as much as I can.
I showered and shaved for this, man.
Wow.
I also cleaned up my beard a little bit.
I really wanted to, but you can see my edge lines are not good right now.
Sad. So that's right. We're doing this episode live. We are on Twitch right now. People are seeing us. You might be listening to us sometime after Friday the 20th, because this is a normal podcast episode as well. But if you want to see us, you can probably check this out over on our YouTube channel. Hopefully this will make it up there.
Yep.
It'll be on Shane's Twitch VODs for a little bit. Those eventually get recycled. I don't know how often they do, but
oh yeah, affiliate gets a longer thing. Don't worry.
Oh, cool. Shane is an affiliate, so you can subscribe or just follow him, whatever you prefer.
I prefer subscribe. I mean, I got to be honest.
I do too. I prefer people subscribe to you as well. On this week's episode, we're going to try something that people said couldn't be done. We consulted with a team of medical professionals to confirm that tonight's episode could be done safely, And we also have paramedics on site to ensure that no one gets hurt during this recording. Because we're going for the world record today. In the past, whenever we talk about decks, we'll cover 1, maybe 3, at most a baker's dozen. But tonight, we're going all the way. 100 decks.
And let's be honest, we have no idea how this is going to go.
None.
We have 100 decks. We're trying to not kill our editor, so we're going to go through these pretty fast.
I forgot that I have the slides. So hold on. There's slide 1. There's slide 2. What's slide 3? Okay, hold on. I'll save this because Stan's still gone
for a minute. Yeah.
One of the nice things about doing 100 decks is that finally, for the first time ever, no one will be disappointed in us.
The question was
Their
asked.
parents.
The question was asked: are there even 100 decks? We had to cut decks. I thought we were going to be reaching, and we really weren't.
Yeah,
In fact, we had to cut and consolidate some decks. We decided, so I think we could have stretched this out to easy 125, 130.
I think another thing, Stan, did you mention to the people who are not watching this live that this is a live recording, so the episode is going to be a little bit funny?
He did.
Okay.
He did. But it's good to emphasize that again. But stay with us, podcast listeners, because this will mostly be a normal show.
Before all that, we're saving the best for first. It's housekeeping.
Yay!
We got there.
New patrons this week: Jake M, Mac Rossman 18, Jacob C, Andrew D, and Alex G. Welcome to the Dive Down Nation.
5 new patrons, 5 new citizens of the nation. We appreciate you.
Also, thanks to Mickey M for increasing their tier of patron support. Love that.
Are you sure it's not Mickey S? I thought that was the other Mickey S.
Are they both Mickey S's?
Yeah.
I thought
Mickey
it was,
S. He's in the chat. He just told us it was Mickey S. It's Mickey S.
He was tired of the other Mickey S getting all the shout outs.
Mickey number 2 and number 1, in whichever order you prefer. Thank you both. Back-to-back Mickey increased tiers is pretty cool, though. That's an achievement unlocked.
Yeah, absolutely.
No reviews this week. Oh,
Yeah,
well.
we haven't had a review for a minute. Hey, if you are out there, you haven't given us a review, make us feel good about ourselves. We appreciate it.
I mean, hey, if we don't get reviews after doing 100 decks in 2 hours, I don't know what.
Hold on. We have live confirmation that a review is left today, but I don't see it. Maybe next week we'll pick it up. Hopefully.
All right. Yeah, we'll probably see it next week. But let's give a shout out to Napcaster Mage,
Thanks,
who left
Napcaster
us
Mage.
a review this week, and we'll thank them again next week.
So, this episode is 100% brought to you by yourselves. We would not still be doing this if we did not have your generosity and your support. And it's ridiculously appreciated. I'm actually getting a little bit choked up, a little verklempt right now because we never thought that we would have the support and the embracement by you all in the community out there, in the modern community, in the pioneer community, in the magic community. You make us able to pay for our editor, to make sweet swag that we never thought we'd be able to make. Really feel like we've created something awesome with you. And I think we frequently say that the community, the Dive Down Nation, is the best part about making a podcast. And that's 100% true. If we didn't have the community, we wouldn't just be shouting out into the ether. We wouldn't just be talking to each other. You make it what it is, and you continue to make it what it is. And as we always say, we appreciate you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so many people to thank. The nation in general, all the regulars in the Slack. There's so many people to name, and many of them are in the chat right now. Tanner, our editor, Everett, Emma Partlow, who was one of the first people to kind of help boost our signal a little bit with people. Really appreciate that. And Ben, our TO, who has really brought a whole other dimension to the community for everybody that we weren't able to do. He started running tournaments that I think have really made everybody in the community have a way to engage during this pandemic. And I agree with Shane that it's been shocking what kind of comfort and joy the podcast and the community has brought to me during this weird time for us. I was thinking about it today. I think we've done about 40 episodes since the lockdown theoretically started.
Good Lord.
You know what I mean? Maybe 35-ish. It's a lot of the run. And so thank you so much for providing something for us to look forward to every week. And we hope that it's something that you all look forward to too.
I might save my thank yous for the wind down, for the back of the episode. See if I can make my colleagues cry.
But I'm looking forward to that. But if you want to join the Patreon, head on over to patreon.com/thedivedown and be a part of the nation.
It's pretty fun. Also, you can support the show while you play Magic. If you play Magic online, there's this great website. It's called manatraders.com. It lets you rent Magic Online cards straight into your MTGO account. You have to return them eventually. It's your standard Blockbuster family video model.
Stan, I I went to Mana Traders, and I had the Death and Taxes still.
And they didn't yell at you?
It was like 2 weeks.
Terrible. They yelled at me for the first time because I held on to Legacy Elves for too long.
Whoops.
Probably all those cradles.
Yeah.
So you can sign up for Mana Traders with coupon code TheDiveDown, all one word, and get 15% off your first 3 months of renting Magic Online cards. That's manatraders.com.
All right. There's no news desk this week. So are we ready to get down to it?
Oh my gosh. Hold on. So we got to talk about what we're doing, right?
Yeah, go on to the next slide.
All right. Next slide, please.
So I'll go over the rules of the night one more time. We talked about it with the people on Twitch before, but this is for the pod listeners. Hey, we're going to go through 100 decks. Here's how it's going to work. We are first going to go through 75 decks in a random order that are the decks that did not make it into our joint top 25 modern decks of all time. So first thing we're going to do is go through the 75 decks that didn't quite make it, and then we're going to go through so those ones are in a random order again. There's no ranking out of those 75. And then the top 25, we're going to go from deck 25 to deck number 1 according to our composite rankings that Stan, Shane, and I put together. It's according to us, not scientific top 25.
It's pretty scientific.
We did some pivot tables, but we didn't do as many as we could have. There's only so much time in the day.
Dave, you're never satisfied with the number of pivot tables we produce.
Mostly it's because I don't know how to make one. And so I'm constantly like, just pivot it, you guys. The last thing I wanted to say was the fun aspect of this is Stan did a top 25, I did a top 25, Shane did a top 25, and then Shane had the job of aggregating them into a single unified list. And so Stan and I actually don't know the order that the decks are going to be in, and Shane does. Yeah. So that'll be a fun reveal when we get to that part about 3 hours from now at this pace.
All right.
So let's do it. It's time to hop into those top 75 or the first 75 decks.
Yeah, the chum of the format.
I mean, I don't know about the chum. There's a lot of good decks and a lot of weird decks in here, but let's do it.
Stan, I like Blue Cheese's suggestion, by the way. I'm no longer you don't even have a nickname for me, right?
You're the one and only.
Yeah, one and only. I'm now Shane the Aggregator. All right. Here we go. I'm in it. We're in number 100.
Deck the first. Gruul Panza.
I love when this came up first in the random order. I was really happy.
Yeah, me too. I remember one time I was playing Blue Moon at Dice Dojo here in Chicago, and someone cast a turn 2 Stone Rain against me for the very first time. And when that happened, I thought to myself, this is probably just the best deck in Modern. Except that was 2 years ago. And as it turns out, it took a while for Modern Panza to actually make it to the big leagues. But now we've kind of seen that happen. And I believe that we can specifically thank Klothys for that. Klothys gave this deck an angle of attack that basically no other deck has that doesn't run Klothys. And likewise, Panza didn't really have a similar tool in the past. But I think the absolute coolest thing about Panza is that despite the various heuristics that we have for evaluating cards in Modern on this podcast, this deck can still reward you for playing 3, 4, 5 mana permanents that would be slow and overcosted in most other strategies.
Wow, I don't even get like any follow up. You want to move this fast?
Go ahead. If you have a follow up, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean Panza is just the deck that was like a rogue deck, and then all it took was a little bit of the right metagame and a little bit of the right power level. And I think it's a pretty awesome, I think, first deck to talk about, because it's why Modern is so cool in a lot of ways, right? Which is like, hey, this kind of a joke deck became kind of a tier 1 deck.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a deck I had fun playing. I can't add much more to what these guys put, but it's a good one to pick up. And if you haven't, try it. All right, what's next? The second deck.
The Rock.
Is the Rock. All right, so the Rock, I feel like, is an interesting place. It's sort of this deck that tries to walk the line of 1-for-1s. You know what I mean? It's like, how can I do some hand disruption? It doesn't have as much card advantage as what maybe like Jund has. It's got a more stable mana base. It's not as painful. It also has Field of Ruin these days, which is a good incentive to play it. And I feel like this is the type of deck that really good pro players, like someone like Willie Adel, can do really, really good with it, where every time I pick up a deck like this, I feel lost.
Yeah.
Shane, this was in your wheelhouse for a little bit. How'd you feel about this kind of deck?
Yeah, I remember I was playing this a little bit. I remember long time, I think our first patron, Cool Jake, was also a player of this deck. And what's good about it is, like you said, it's like before you had so much incentive to be doing things like play the unbanned Bloodbraid Elf, like to play Renin 6. You could say, hey, I want to play Hand Disruption. I want to play Dark Confidant. I want to play Scavenging Ooze main deck. And I want to be able to play, like you said, like Field of Ruin or other things like that. But then you're also playing like that Golgari creature land that's just terrible. Like it's like a 2/3 Death Touch or something like that.
Yeah.
Instead of Raging Ravine, which at the time was a much, much better creature land. So, I mean, it's kind of sad when you think about, I don't remember the last time I saw, I can't remember the person's name, like the Rock stalwart who always just plays the Rock.
Willie Adel?
No, it's a different person. It's
Dwayne Johnson.
Well, they have Dwayne Johnson. This is their Magic the Gathering online name. But
yeah.
Anyway,
Dave, your point about 1-for-1s, is that to say that Jund is the deck that wants to 2-for-1 over and over, and this is kind of like the half off bin?
That's kind of what I think a little bit, but it's just about what tools you have access to. All right, guys, love these two decks. We can't talk about each one of these decks as long as we are.
You're right.
Here.
You're right.
Give me a ding,
Dave. You'll be the official dinger.
Right. Deck
third,
number 3,
Slivers. One of the most synergy-driven decks of all time. Slivers, what? You get a bunch of cheap creatures in 5 colors. You have cool text, like all your Slivers have flying, or they all get 1/1, or they all have horsemanship. And so you spew these things onto the battlefield with Collected Company, Aether Vial, and overwhelm your opponent. Pretty sweet.
Yeah, just interesting deck. It plays out on that kind of like human spirits axis a little bit because of the great enablers in Collected Company and Aether Vial.
Yeah.
I suddenly blanked on the name of that. But disruptive in a different way. Creatures get bigger faster. They get evasion faster, or they lose it. Like there's weird things that Slivers does that people aren't prepared for sometimes.
And you get yet another rainbow land in Sliver Hive or whatever. And and what's crazy is there's so many slivers. Like there's so many sideboard options for doing something weird with a sliver, and that's got to be fun. Like thinking out your sideboard of all slivers all the time.
Yep.
I got the next one too. Green Devotion, another Cool Jake deck. Like somehow Nykthos is not a modern powerhouse, but Green Devotion has tried to make it a thing for years now. It's like this is like the actual green version of Tron, right? Like there's just something like a little bit satisfying about powering out like prime time or like crater hoofing your opponent. And I think this deck is probably a little bit underplayed. Like just throw Leyline of Abundance in there. Like let's go to town.
Was this a primetime hoof deck? I thought this was like a bee queen. What's that?
Hornet Queen is in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything expensive and green is in the deck.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. We'll see. Hold on. Here's a problem, y'all. Is we split up the notes, and sometimes a few of us we're gonna go a few in a row here. So I'm up again. Green white hate bears.
Yeah, I also think that we should throw Green White Value Town into this bucket as well.
Yeah,
because it has
certainly.
some similar pieces. Our on-screen graphic right now is Thalia, but there's so many different pieces within this archetype that you can do different things with. That sometimes you can go down the hate axis with your kind of Taxis kind of plan with some Arbiters and some Thalias. Sometimes you can go in a different way where you concentrate more on stuff like Raman Excavator and Knight of the Reliquary and kind of do some land kind of stuff. There's a lot of different things going on. As Shane noted in the notes that I'm taking over for him,
Please do. Thank you.
Hate Bears is a very fair deck most of the
It's
time.
like, hold on, okay, does fair mean not good?
I think fair means doesn't ever steal games. That's what fair means, right? Now, Leonin Arbiter can steal a game sometimes, as can Thalia against the right deck. So I think it's a little weird. But then, this deck has been around for a long time. It's run Kosali Pride Mage, Void of Resurgence, lots of 2-drops. Those are the bears, right? And they're hateful. So
Hate them.
definitely had some fun against people playing Green White Value Town against me in dive down tournaments. Nikki B, if you're out there, this is a hat tip for you. It's a powerful deck sometimes. Next deck.
Jeskai Ascendancy.
Yes. Jeskai Ascendancy, the deck that never quite got there in Modern. It's had moments where people thought it was going to be good with Fate Stitcher and Cerulean Wisps and that kind of early combo with it. And then later on, it was in a version with Urza that I actually thought was maybe going to be the good version.
And Emery.
And Emery as well. Yeah, totally. But it was never, I think it turned out to be too fidgety in the Urza decks. And then there's just more powerful combos to do. So this, to me, is a card that I think ended up on our list. It's not like this one had any votes for the top 25, but it is an engine card that's going to be out there and hovering around for a while. Like, there's always going to be cards that get printed that are going to make people wonder if Jeskai Ascendancy is good enough or not, but not right now.
I also love the art. The art is really sweet.
All right, up next, Dice Factory. I played against this deck for the very first time ever just last night against Mickey.
Which
Wow.
Mickey?
One of the Mickeys.
One of like the 3 Mickeys?
Yeah, so here's what I'll say. I was on Greentron. Mickey's on Dice Factory. C-Tron, because of Core Tapper. It's game 2. I cast an Emrakul, the Promised End, and Mindslave my opponent. I bungle it completely. On the crackback, Mickey casts Mindslaver on me, and I did not win that game. What I did learn, though, from this very first experience, Dice Factory, I think, very easy to beat if you just have a Sony Silence.
Game
That's
over.
it. That's basically it.
There were some people that were thinking this deck was pretty busted for a while, maybe like 3-4 months ago, but kind of receded again, right?
Chad is asking about Stony Silence in 2020. That's also shorthand for Karn the Great Creator.
Yeah. Next deck. Something from the past.
Dave, what is this?
This deck is called Counter Cats.
This is a made up deck.
This is not a made up deck. This deck is an early 4-color deck played by Josh Utter-Layton in the original Modern Pro Tour, and it's a bit of a interesting kind of early zoo-ish deck, but it had some really powerful cards in it. Knight of the Reliquary, Lightning Bolt, Path to Exile, Green, Suns, Zenith, and Bant Charm. 3 Bant Charm were in this deck to kind of fit into that first Pro Tour, and this deck came in second. So I just kind of wanted to give a little bit of a hat tip to one of the early decks that sort of, some of the cards stayed powerful enough to play, and some of them are gone at this point. But this is just some of the weird stuff from the beginning of when Modern started.
Miracles.
Perhaps the most luck-based version of Control in Modern that really forces you to believe in the heart of the cards to actually pull through.
Hold on. Aspiring Spike is not in the chat. not on the stream. I don't know if he would say it's luck based.
So I've watched Spike stream Miracles, and I can't tell you how many times opponent cast a spell that he could not manipulate the top of his deck.
Just blind flip.
And then he just blinds flip it anyway. So what I love about this deck is that it forces you to very slowly and meticulously draw the top card of your library every single time, because if you put the drawn card into your hand, it's too late. And you've already screwed up your chance to cast a powerful miracle spell.
Yeah, I can never play this deck in paper because I will always forget to wait for my miracle trigger. Absolutely. Every time I'll be like, pick it up, and then I'll be like 2 minutes later, and I'll be like, oh, God.
You got to do that funny draw that people do where it's like they pick it up and hold it like way out here.
Yeah.
And then they're like...
You make sure.
And then they sniff it? Is that what you were just doing with your hand?
Do you smell what Golgari midrange is cooking?
Do you smell the terminus I'm cooking? Next deck.
Bant.
Soul Herder.
Soul Herder.
All right. This deck, really fun. People loved it after Modern Horizons came out. A lot of people thought that it was broken. Gabe Nassif was streaming it. Not broken. They thought it was really good because of all the great comes into play abilities.
There's this one time when Stoneforge just got unbanned and Gabe Nassif was playing this deck on stream a lot that I had gotten in my head that this is the truth. And there was this crazy week right before a Nerd Rage gaming tournament where I first met Judge Jack, where I like scrambled with Dave and some of my other friends to help me find pieces for Bant Soul Herder, because I was like, I'm playing this deck. In the end, I chose not to play this deck. But...
Yeah, I mean, I do agree this deck with chat. Chat is saying right now, this deck is so annoying. I agree this deck is so annoying. I wish I knew how to beat it faster. I feel like it's one of those ones where, like, I feel like I'm way ahead. Someone plays some of the cards from Bant Soul Herder. I'm like, this is going to be no problem. Then suddenly they have 3 12/12 Soul Herders, and I'm just dead. And that's it.
Ooh, 8-rack.
We got there.
I'm going to talk about 8-rack.
Go ahead, because
Like,
I hate 8-rack.
I know you do. Yeah, Dave, your one note was, I have nothing to say about 8-rack, so I decided to flesh this out a little bit. So 8-rack, I kind of see it in my brain, in my mind palace, as like this weird cousin to Mill. Okay? Just that it's going to be around forever, and you're never going to respect it properly, and then you get paired against it, and it's going to discard everything in your hand, and it's going to Raven's Crime you into the ground, and then it's going to beat you down with a Mutavault, and you're just going to feel really bad. And it's the deck that's probably furthest from tier 1, and yet somehow I respect it the most.
Yeah.
Well, I had to reply to Adrian.
My wife has
oh
popped
no.
up in the
Oh no,
chat.
I just doxed her. I apologize. Dave's
okay.
wife. Tanner.
That's already out there. All right. This is another one I'm going to steal from Shane for a minute.
What? I
The
haven't
next
talked for
deck.
like 5 decks. And you should steal it though.
Jeskai Nahiri. Anybody remember this deck? There was definitely a period of time not too long after Shadows of Innistrad came out where people thought that this deck was the best version of Control and one of the best decks in Modern. And the idea here was basically Jeskai Control with Nahiri that searches up Emrakul. Very on theme flavor-wise for what Nahiri does, but also kind of worked, kind of didn't work. I thought that it was a good enough deck to take to a Grand Prix one time where Shane and I got up on a
Was that
Saturday
one?
morning. Yes, and drove from
Like
Chicago
the
to
night the
Indianapolis.
night before we were like, oh wait, we lose an hour.
Yeah, we were like, we need to leave at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it was 1 o'clock in the morning when we realized that. And we drove from Chicago to Indianapolis in a rainstorm at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I ended up going 0-4 with the deck. 0-4 drop with the deck at the Grand Prix.
It was not a great day. The best part about that day, Dave, is the Applebee's steak at the end of the day.
Yeah, the best part of the day I felt like was when we talked to Craig Wesco for a minute and just said,
funny.
"What's up, Craig?"
I mean, I just gotta say, do you remember when Jeskai Nahiri, or rather when Nahiri was like something you could legitimately do for 4 mana? Like this was a card that you could play for 4 mana and expect to live for 2 turns and win with. Like that's incredible.
Yes.
That's Modern of a particular age.
Yeah, I don't think it was ever really of the right vintage for Modern. I think people were kind of more hopeful about it than they should have been.
Yeah, I think it kind of just like replaced a Johnny Vengeant when Jeskai control was kind of on the downswing, and people maybe thought this was the new application for Jeskai, and it just never really panned out.
Yeah, but the best part of that Grand Prix was Applebee's because it was a really rough Grand Prix.
Really rough Grand Prix. Pretty decent steak. Oh, Bogles. We got
right.
there.
Yeah, this one's dedicated to Emma, who's up at like 2 a.m. to watch us talk about.
Now she can
modern
stop
cards.
the stream.
Now she's like, great, I can go to bed now.
And it's not just Emma. There's a bunch of people in our Slack who really love this deck, even though its heyday is pretty solidly in the rearview mirror, with the exception of an occasional weekend here and there when Dylan Donegan identifies it as like the best choice for a tournament. And the way I see it, it pretty much falls into a similar category as decks like Infect or sometimes even Prowess, in that you play these low drops, you pump them up, you swing for lethal on like turn 3 or 4, except those decks nowadays are just consistently stronger, and like Bogles needs to be in the very perfect metagame to kind of like squeeze past a bunch of spot removal basically when mid-range or Prowess is everywhere.
Oh, I thought the whole point of this deck was that spot removal doesn't do anything.
That's the thing.
Well, that's the thing. Everyone's playing removal and Jund, so you played this deck instead.
Exactly. Yeah. Or something like, it's actually really good against stuff where a lot of life gain is going to help you out too, right? So against a metagame with a lot of red decks can be good too.
Don't forget the days of like $25 daybreak coronets.
Yeah. Absolutely. Next up.
Niv to Light.
Niv to Light. Ooh. This is a complicated story of this deck, right? So I don't know if
Where's
you
Cave
remember.
Dan?
First off, hat tip to Cave Dan and Faithless Brewing for being the people that put this deck together. It was a deck that we reviewed during a Sleeve Believe Heave episode post War of the Spark. And I kind of trashed this deck in that I had a really rough time playing it. But let's remember, this was pre-Modern Horizons, so there was no Red and 6. There was no Arkham's Astrolabe. There was no other cards that were super important to this deck. It was an earlier version. Interestingly enough, there was, of course, a period where this deck was very, very good towards the end of 2019, essentially. And then kind of disappeared again because I think it got outmoded by some other mid-rangey kind of grindy decks around Uro. Now, there were Uros in Niv to Light as well at different points in time, but I just feel like this one's kind of faded a little bit, but I think that this is another one of those cards that is such a powerful payoff. There's always going to be room for it to come back.
We got Motown Lush in the chat calling it trade binder mid range, and I like that.
It's the perfect name for it. It's just like, oh yeah, I do have this 1 5-color gold card. Just need a nab.
Yeah, and also Lawson Zandy says that this is number 1 deck, not close.
Hey, I didn't rate these, my friend.
Lawson, we see you,
yeah,
and we know that you can do things with this that we cannot.
I finally get to talk again. Holy moly. Bant Eldrazi. So, for all the true heads out there, all the true modern heads might remember this deck. I definitely built this deck, and I'm not sure if I ever really played it. I think I did. I'm sure I had to play this deck. It might have been what I bought Noble Hierarchs for, which is saying something. That might have been Invect. I don't know. Like, remember like the few months when like Brushland was a moderately expensive card to purchase because of this deck? Like, I had to get mismatched high heavily played ones to save some cash, and I think I still paid like $5 each.
Yeah, this deck was sweet, and it was such a cool way for Eldrazi to basically off-ramp from the colorless Broken deck that got banned into something that was still super duper powerful, and used a bunch of weird like cards that were really good in Standard too. And yes, as PFC Wintergreen just mentioned in the chat, it's all about how can I play a turn 2 Thought-Knot Seer.
Yes,
there's a bunch of decks that are based on that idea. How often can we turn 2 Thought-Knot Seer?
Yeah, how bad can it be if you're playing turn 2 TKS, right?
We'll have more on that later.
Up next, Crabvine.
Dom, where are you at?
So this is not a Dredge deck. Don't call it Dredge. It's Crabvine. Though I feel like it almost bears enough similarity to Dredge that Shane would want to play it, and yet he doesn't. And I've kind of come to this conclusion that this will need to be one of our we're doing it for science episodes, because for one reason or another, none of us want to play it. Which makes me want to ask you guys, Why do we hate Vengevine so much?
I love Vengevine, and one deck that I remember that we did not make on the list is Bridgevine.
Oh my gosh. How can we forget that deck?
Totally forgot Bridgevine. But anyway, because there's a much better version of it later on.
Oh, that's a good point.
But Crabvine is a deck that, maybe we'll get to someday, and I think it definitely has moments. I mean, it recently won a large Modern tournament. It won the Star City Games one that they had a little bit ago. Or not, who was that? Oh, won the Mana Traders series.
Oh, yeah.
Last time there was a Modern Mana Traders series.
Yeah.
Cool deck.
I mean, the real reason, Stan, that I didn't ever play this deck is Vengevine was like $25, and I didn't have them. I wasn't just gonna drop $100 on Vengevines.
Exactly. All right, so
yeah, we're at a good stopping point.
Let's do some shout outs real quick and then get back into it.
All right, Tanner, this is where you start cutting, my friend, because y'all, we're already up to $615.
Wow.
On the campaign. Some of you are outrageously generous, and anyone who's giving us anything is outrageously generous. So we appreciate you again. So shout outs to the Serum Visions podcast. That is another part of the family, another part of the modern podcast family. Shout out to them for starting up. I mean, what they're brewing adjacent. They are good deck builders doing good things, and we're happy to see them join the Magic the Gathering podcast fam.
Yeah.
Surf Boy 420. I don't know what I think like 420. I don't know what that means. Kilgore Trout 503. Jason. We see you. We appreciate you. Grant Mantis, we see you. We appreciate you. Emma Partlow, we've shouted you out a lot, and we'll do it again right here. Anonymous donation. Mickey S. But which one? I'm gonna guess it's Turtle Power, but we'll see. Blue Cheese, Kyle, Kiefer, Trev. My wife actually donated as well in the name of our cats, Derby and Maisie. John S., we see you. KZ, we see you. And Caleb, not Caleb Shearer, we see you. We appreciate all of you.
So much. This is so cool.
All right, we got to get back into it. Deck 17.
Thalia Stompy.
All right, a deck that I really like. Now, we did get some time to talk about this a couple weeks ago on our Mono White Taxes episode as a callback. Remember, this is the Thalia deck, the Taxes deck, essentially, that leaned really hard into how to get 2 mana on turn 1 so that you could play a 2 mana hate piece like Leonin Arbiter, like Chalice on 1, like Thalia, things like that. Really fun deck. I enjoyed it a lot. Going from this to a turn 2 TKS sometimes, or into a really early Reality Smasher was just a great way to win.
Dave, is this like, besides our testing of Red Prison, is this like your only Chalice deck that you've ever really played?
I played Eldrazi-tron as well.
Oh yeah, that counts.
Yeah. But this is the one that I like the most because it's a little bit more. It doesn't have Tron lands in it. You guys know I don't like Tron lands, so.
I don't know why.
Oh no, I clicked the next slide.
2 of you. That's
all right. Grishelbrand.
I'm going to take this one. Going to go through it fast. This is a deck that when someone plays it against me in paper, I still have no idea if they're cheating or not. I'm just going to be totally honest with this deck. It's also weirdly like I don't know why it's kind of like on the wane. It has some moments where it's super powerful, being able to cheat Griselbrand into play. It's probably mostly been outmoded by Neoform, I would guess. And so, but this deck was a staple of like early non-interactive, kind of the most non-interactive combo decks that you can think of. Faithless Looting got rid of it too. Yes, thank you, Turtle Power.
Yeah, Turtle Power.
I still remember.
The words from out of me.
I remember the first time that I played against this deck, and it was at. I mean, Dave. It's remember when I played at Game Storm all the time, right? So playing at Game Storm, just on a regular old LGS night, someone goes off on turn 2 against me. I think 2 games in a row, and I was just like, oh, this is what people say when they this is busted. I need this to be banned immediately.
Right.
And like, of course, like every other game, they probably are like, well, bricked again.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, up next, it's mill time.
Stan, you insisted that this deck. Stan, Can I spill that you had this in your top 25?
Yes, I did, and I stand by that. The Library Burn deck, now with 8 crabs. So the thing that I love about Mill is that it's an engine-based control deck full of very creative and unique ways to punish opponents that are just playing Magic. But then sometimes it gets completely destroyed because you put an uncastable Gaia's Blessing in your sideboard, and that's Mill. That said, I kind of think it might be the best true Dimir deck in Modern's history. Change my mind, chat, if you dare.
Wow.
And you know why I put it in my top 25 is because it's been around forever and it will remain around forever. And then one day it'll get like its 12th crab and it'll actually be an unstoppable tier 1 powerhouse until, Gaia's Blessing happens again.
All right. 20 out of 75 we give Urrosa. And so if I'm being like really honest, like this isn't really drastically that different from like the Oko Urza mid-range-ish control-ish style decks, but it's just like what those decks became after a bunch of cards got banned. You replace Oko with Uro. I mean, I guess you're just swapping one crazy card for another. Maybe go 4-color, add Omnath. Like, maybe blink some stuff with Yorion. Like, why not, right? Like, let's... Urza, Oro, Oko, whatever.
Yeah, to me, this is just the first time we're going to talk about Uro tonight, and the first time we're going to talk about Urza, and there's many more moments for both coming up.
Urrosa. Neobrand.
Yeah, Neobrand. The only thing that I can think of when I see this deck is no, not like this.
God, yeah, it's basically the new Griselbrand, right? Where it's just like, oh crap.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm glad that we get to talk about Griselbrand and Neobrand so close together because I'd like to forget that either one of them exists. Although, just remember that there's always going to be people wanting to break the demon. What's his name?
Griselbrand.
Suddenly, I totally forgot his name for a minute, which it's in the decks. Anyway, so I've only seen this deck a couple of times for all the shirt rending that's gone over Neobrand in like 2 years. But it's probably another one of those decks that's one card away from being really broken and eating a ban.
I mean, it's funny that this is sort of like this is sideways moved into like the oops all spells style decks too.
Yep.
It's a good card. It's cheap. I mean, it's 2 mana. So that's good enough.
The perfect CMC, in my opinion.
Exactly. All right, next.
Bant No Control. So, thinking about this deck, what stood out as kind of wild to me was when this deck was around, because of Astrolabe, many modern players, myself included, kind of convinced ourselves that this was fine, and playing 4 or 5 colors of Magic in a deck full of basic lands was perfectly normal.
Totally normal.
Everything is healthy here. And we talked about that era as a relatively healthy modern period of time, and I wonder if perhaps part of that had to do with just because like Ponza was around to maybe help clean up the mess. It's sort of the tail end of the Astrolabe era, but also one could argue that this deck got Astrolabe banned, or contributed to it strongly, and I also suspect we're much happier now for it.
Absolutely, Astrolabe was just always going to be there waiting to be broken. So glad it's gone. Sorry to Urza and sorry to Snow Control, but that's what it is.
Bye, Astrolabe.
Another one of our snow decks. Everyone playing Snowlands was weird. Like, this is one of like my sort of favorite deck dives we've ever done. We didn't really quite do Scred Red Prison, but we did Red Prison. One of the most high rolly decks in like a series of high rolly decks that I have loved to play. Like turn 1 4-drop. Why not? How could you hate doing that? Like, oh, okay, so I spent 3 cards to get there. I'm the one with the Chandra on turn 1, okay? You Scred Red Prison, whatever you want to call it, or whatever variant you want to play. It's like a sweet way to power out early Planeswalkers, lock your opponent out of the game. Fun deck. Shout out to our old co-host, Zach, for always bringing decks like this to every tournament and doing quite well with them.
Yeah, he walked the path of mastery for sure.
Shane, what was your favorite 3 or 4 drop to play on turn 1 when we played?
Blood Moon? Blood
You
Moon?
like the turn 1 Blood Moon?
Blood Moon.
I really like the turn 1 Goblin Rabblemaster.
I mean, that's hard to resist. The allure.
Also good.
I like the turn 1 Chandra Torch of Defiance, not going to lie. Had that
Yeah,
happen a
that's
couple times.
crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, actually, really, turn 1 Karn, honestly. So,
Yeah, it was good too.
ding.
All right.
Stan.
Hey,
I'm going to steal this from you, Stan. I'm not going to steal it.
You are?
No, I'm not.
My elf deck should be around here somewhere. I don't know where it is. I love elves. My sweet babies. I still goldfish this deck all the time. I jam it against friends every once in a while. Literally, the last cards I bought in paper was a pair of Yixlid Jailers because I started working on my sideboard for green-black elves, and I wanted it to
It's a sweet
be
card.
like a toolbox creature sideboard with Quarter Calling and no non-creature spells. I don't know. I want this deck to be good. I'm worried it maybe never will be, and I have some thoughts later on why it may never be good again. But it lives on in other formats. It's good in Legacy. It might be good in like Historic. It's not good in Pioneer, and I think I have to be okay with that.
Here's a weird one. At deck number 25, 1/4 of the way through the night.
You got there.
We got there. Indomitable Creativity deck.
Indomitable?
Indomitable.
Indomitable?
Indomitable.
Yes. You know, just another way to with this and Polymorph, just another way to treat Emrakul into play. The thing that's really interesting about these builds, of course, is that they use the fetch mechanic to get a card I never thought would be a powerful card in Modern, Dwarven Mine. It's the card that from Eldraine that makes a 1/1 when you fetch it, similar to Mystic Sanctuary. It's part of that cycle. Not as format defining as Mystic Sanctuary, but there you go.
Did we actually get to the point where Dwarven Mine was powerful in Modern? Just
No,
because
I'm just belling through it. Let's go.
Okay.
Oh, Dave, you gotta roll with this one, my friend.
Yes, Mardu Pyromancer. So this is the first deck that I played that showed the power of Bedlam Reveler to me, and also weirdly the power of Faithless Looting to me.
The only mid-range deck slower than Obzon.
Exactly. It was like, how slow do you want to go? You're just gonna like try to do stuff until you get to cast Bedlam Reveler. I did really enjoy playing this deck. It was funny because it was what led me to really understand how fast Arclight Phoenix was going to be good once I saw just how good Faithless Looting was. And unfortunately, you know, Mardu Pyromancer sort of died for Is It Phoenix's and so many other broken decks sins with the Faithless Looting ban. I think there's always going to be other Rakdos shells that can maybe make some of this stuff happen, you know, but we may not see its like again for a while. Great deck, though. Good design.
All right, I'm up.
Speaking of another red-black deck.
Yeah, from a Dave deck into a Stan deck.
Right, and losing this deck to the ban of Faithless Looting probably hurts me more than losing Is It Phoenix, believe it or not.
Ooh.
Because Unearth plus Skelemental is, in my opinion, even more fun than Bolt Snap Bolt.
Skelemental!
We haven't heard that pitch in a long
I
time.
miss it.
At least, if nothing else, Seasoned Pyromancer is still good in other decks, but never forget that this was Old Peasy's first home.
That's right. I mean, that was the first deck that kind of showed the power of that card. I mean, people were playing around with it. The other card, of course, that's big in here is Unearth, which is beautiful.
Yeah. Unearth is one of those cards that, like, it's so good for the mana cost, but only works in some archetypes and only at certain times. It's just like it's a great card that we have access to now, but it didn't kind of blow open the format in ways that I might have hoped.
I got Brian from the Serum Visions podcast in chat saying that they're going to bring this deck back, so please do.
Skelemental, bring back. Okay, Kiki Court, I'll do this. Did any of us ever play this deck? I'm not sure.
Nope.
Not really.
Yeah, it's
this
just
deck always seemed too difficult to me.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like it's just another one on the series of like post birthing pod, post splinter twin, like little bit of like value chord type stuff. It's like, I mean, are we ever gonna play this? Is anyone ever gonna play this deck ever again besides Jeff Hoagland?
I don't know. Chat is all in agreement that this deck sucks.
It's fascinating. Everybody's angry about it.
Yeah.
This isn't in the top 25, so don't worry. We're archiving history here right now.
Let's get out of here before everyone tunes out.
It was a deck that
Exactly.
existed. Kiki and Cord were in the same deck at some point in the history.
We're gonna keep looking for ways to make Kiki Jiki work, is what this is.
Okay, I'm going to talk about two decks side by side and try to get two dings out of Dave. First one, Through the Breach. To me, this is a control deck. It's usually red-blue. I see it as a Blue Moon variant, basically. And you play control, and then you cheat in an Emrakul. That's easy. Ding. The next deck,
Ooh.
this one is Titan Breach.
Stan, can I say, I'm gonna peel back the curtain a little bit. We had Seismic Loam in this deck's spot, and which is also not a real deck, by the way. And Stan was like, "Look, Titan Breach is significantly different enough." We didn't have any arguments really about our 100 list. We had a few interesting discussions where we were like, "This deck sucks, delete it," and or this deck's not that different, or it's different enough.
Basically, yeah. And Titan Breach, unlike the previous deck, to me, this is the ramp strategy. It's red-green, and it uses Breach for all sorts of stuff. Not just Emrakuls, also Primeval Titans, Woodfall Primus, and where the other deck is a Blue Moon variant, this is like a Valakut Scapeshift variant. And that's all you got to know. Can I get another ding?
All right, we're after 30. I also want to mention, for people listening after the fact, that I'm going to keep the donations open through next Sunday. So the episode will be live on Friday. If you download this and you're like, oh, I can donate. So you can donate Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, maybe end of Sunday. I'll end the campaign. So if you're hearing this, we would love to have your donation. You don't have to be doing it live, although we do appreciate these live donations, which I will read now. So we stopped with Caleb last time. We have received Ron D, Danny and Dave H.
Hey, thank you.
And Ryan Junko.
Hey, thank you, Ryan.
Thanks.
Abstract Dramatic, Shadrach Meshach, and Abednego, and Azinta, also with their donations. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. All right,
Love you
onward.
all.
Deck 31.
I have to say we're up to $765.
Wow, amazing.
I mean, thank you all. Feeding America is definitely appreciating your work. We will be matching up to $1,000, and honestly, if this goes off, hey, it's we love giving to charity. So yeah. All right, next.
We have nothing else to spend the Patreon money
Nothing else.
True.
All right, next deck, Mono White Taxes. We just talked about this deck like 2 episodes ago. If Legacy was a meal kit, modern Mono White Taxes is kind of like your DIY recipe for strip mining people.
I love it.
Except it weirdly calls for a lot of sour cream. And you're like, I just thought I was making waffles. And that's taxes for you. If you want to hear more about sour cream, listen to episode 98.
It's very sour.
Oh, man,
Next.
remember this.
Snoop Combo Goblins, deck 32. Didn't really turn out the way that we thought with this, did it? I mean, I think that this is, a lot of people had a lot of faith in this deck being like really tierish. And I just don't think that it got to the level of the new Splinter Twin. Obviously, the engine's still powerful. The different pieces let you do a lot of searching and things like that. But turned out didn't really need to be banned or nerfed or anything like that. It's not even really showing up at this point. I still think it's a cool deck, though.
It's a very cool deck. It operates in a way that not a lot of other decks do. Like, I mean, Snoop looking at the top card of the library is different than other ways that combos are formed, so that's pretty cool. It's fun to like sort of set up the top of your deck and stuff like that. So it's sweet. And like it's a different way to play goblins, and I think that's pretty rad. Orzhov Tokens, another one in my personal list of not good decks that you used to always see at the local game store now and then in 2015. So Orzhov tokens, cheap to build. You get to put a bunch of permanents onto the board. What's not to love about playing this deck? Like, some people just love making tokens.
Yeah, and don't forget, this was the deck that was the only modern event deck that was ever sold.
That's true.
A base level deck for Orzhov tokens.
Get your reasonably priced Marsh Flats for a minute. Like, and at this point, the rate on most of these cards in this deck is just not there. But every once in a while, token seems to have a resurgence. Stan, remember that token deck from just a few months ago? And people were like just going crazy about it.
Yeah, that was a Loxodon deck. So there was like no Sorens. It didn't have what's Lingering Souls. It didn't have Lingering Souls. That was just a
that's
bad.
not a tokens deck.
It was a bad deck that could just beat Etron, and I did. All right, Stoneblade is next.
Not in our top 25. Not.
Kind of weird. There's so many ways to build Stoneblade these days, and rather than hastily trying to talk about Orzhov and Azorius and Jeskai and whatever other color combo wants to play this 6 or 7 card package, can we just take a moment to appreciate that Wizards of the Coast unbanned Stoneforge Mystic and Modern, and the format is generally better off with her around.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I think this is a good time also, Stan, to mention that we bucketed a lot of decks like this because we wanted to cast a wider net. And so when we, there of course was like Jeskai Stoneblade and Blue-White Stoneblade and probably Mardu and stuff like that. And there's of course Grixis Death Shadow and Jund Death Shadow.
We do have one other variant of this in the list later, but it's very different. So.
Yeah. So like we consolidated stuff where we wanted to, we were more granular when we wanted to. It's our podcast. We eat what we like.
Yeah. Remember, this is just these are our rankings.
Yeah.
Let's see what's at 35.
So this is our first sort of rule of 8 deck that I can think of, right? Where it's like, okay, we had sort of as foretold restore balance style decks or things like that, or just restore balance decks in general. But when you have both as foretold and electrodominance, that allows you to cast suspend spells for a dramatically reduced cost, right? Or basically free. And then with the the Rhino pile card from Modern Horizons sort of made this deck reappear for a bit. I think the juice isn't really worth the squeeze on this one in the end, which is why you don't see it too much, but it's a fun deck for people who want to cheat out suspend spells. Merfolk. Oh man. Okay.
You knew it was going to be here somewhere.
I mean, this has mostly been replaced at the top tournament tables with other tribal aggro decks, but it sticks around, right? It's always going to be in like the 5-0 list. You might see it at your LGS even by like the true heads out there, but it's a potent, disruptive aggro tempo deck. And that, you get cheap creatures, you get lords, you get Aether Vial, you get some disruption and try to overwhelm your opponent. Like Spreading Seas and Island Walk is still a good combo.
There you go.
Ding. Shane, keep it going.
Oh, man. Okay, fine. Rule of 8 rears its head again with SRAMOs. SRAM was printed and gave people 8 Pure Steel Paladin effects. And Pure Steel Paladin, I think, is white. And if you cast an artifact, you get to draw a card. Right. And so SRAM also has a similar clause. You cast a bunch of 0 mana nonsense artifacts with one of these cards on the battlefield. You draw through your deck, cast more 0 mana artifacts, and you sort of storm off to eventually kill your opponent with a grape shot. And this is, when it's there, it's a reliable turn 2, turn 3 deck. But
the other big problem with this deck is that Mox Opal was banned. And so you don't get to do it the way that you used to anymore. And so that's part of the reason that this deck is shelved, actually probably a pretty huge amount of it. But
yeah,
I'll tell you what, I've lost to it enough times in paper and things like that to remember it not so fondly.
Elementals.
Hey.
We told you there'd be more.
That's right, Elementals. So I know that this deck exists. I know that it's 5 colors. I know it includes several cards that all three of us absolutely love, including Skelemental, Risen Reef, a perennial favorite of Dave's, Aether Vial. But I also pretty much cannot tell you what actually makes this deck good. But I think it's probably card advantage.
This is one that we definitely would put on the list for decks to keep an eye on to see if it ever gets even better than where it is now. I know that there are some people who really like to play with and brew around this strategy, and we'll see. Aether Vial decks can always become really good quickly if they get the right card.
Yeah, my estimation is that this is the deck you play when you want to play a tribal Aether Vial synergistic creature deck, but humans is just too civilian for you.
So, Stan, we have another Aether Vial tribal deck here next.
Stan,
What do
you
talk about.
You know why we left this for you.
I'm not sure why this deck was left for me. I've actually never piloted this deck while it was in Modern.
Yeah, but look at the
That was
card.
That was shocking to me.
Oh yeah, it's what's that card? Spell
Quiller.
Queller. Spell Queller. I'll attempt to quell this spell. Love that card. Not this deck as much, but I do remember feeling amazing one time when I got to beat it in round 1 of a Nerd Rage tournament while I was on Mono Red Phoenix. And the lesson that stuck with me, which may or may not have been a real lesson, was that I almost lost because I sided in Blood Moon. And it kind of turned out that Blood Moon might not be as powerful against spirits as it is against humans, which is kind of what I thought would happen if I played Blood Moon against spirits. Very small sample size, but play spirits if you're looking for a tribal deck that can beat Blood Moon.
Yeah, I loved this deck. I didn't realize that you had not piloted this and you had only piloted it in Pioneer, Stan, which is part of why I left it. I played this deck a good amount towards the end of 2019, around the same time we started the podcast.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Right before Is It Phoenix started. This deck is sweet. And yes, the blue-white version chat is also really sweet. Unfortunately, we did kind of roll it in with this deck. But
Yeah.
you know what? There's always going to be universes for this deck to work, and we talked about it in the past in our kind of Aether Vial comparison decks, where we were talking about like humans and spirits are good in different pieces of the meta.
Blue Cheese, we're sorry. We love you.
Okay, this one's near and dear to my heart. This is in between the era of like the birthing pod decks I never really got to play, and then the more contemporary devoted druid decks. There was Obzon Company. Okay, so Obzon Company was like, how many different sort of toolkits of creatures can I combine to do cool stuff? Like I can make a zillion life. I can make my creatures have a billion +1/+1 counters. I can scry through my whole deck and like set up a crazy like murderous red cap. You can do all sorts of stuff, right? And so like this was powered by Malira and Anafenza to not get -1/-1 counters like on your persist stuff. But then Vizier of Remedies got printed and this version was basically out of the picture. We might talk about that version later.
Up next, it's Winota. Guys, remember Winota? Whatever happened to Winota?
I mean, Lawson is still, if Lawson is still here in the chat, I know it's still a deck that he brews around with and gets some wins with. I don't remember feeling like it was great the couple of times I tried it in Modern, but it's also just sort of not my style of deck.
Well, I remember loving it and thinking it was like this sweet, explosive, brand new deck to enter Modern, and then it's kind of all but disappeared, and I'm guessing it just can't keep up with either Prowess, Uro, or Primeval Titan, or all of the above. I mean, it does have Magus of the Moon, but Dryad of the Elysian Grove, I guess, kind of beats Magus now, too. Sometimes. Depending.
An aggressive ding. I'll take it, Dave.
That was like the orchestra playing off the person on the Academy Awards. We can do it for this one, too. Hey, it's Living End. Living End, deck 42 on our list of random 75 before we make the cut to our quote-unquote Hall of Fame. Everybody knows Living End. You know, it's a deck that I mostly would point out to say I did some research about early Modern as part of getting ready for this episode, and I could not believe how this deck was on the scene basically as soon as Modern started. And it's been here almost the whole time. It's been largely unchanged almost the whole time. And still pops up very occasionally. It doesn't pop up that much anymore, but it didn't disappear until probably a year or two ago. So Living End, don't forget about it.
It's a thing.
Cycling tribal.
Yep.
Super Friends. So, okay.
Hold on. Who put this deck on the list? When
Me.
I saw this on the
Me.
list and all of your
I
notes,
did.
I was like, okay.
It's me.
I was like, what is this deck though? Like, what
Okay,
is
hold on.
this
Here,
deck?
the reason it's on my list, okay? The reason it's on my list is I will never forget, like, playing again at I think this was at a Chicago game store, actually. This is when I had moved away from out of Downers and into Chicago proper. And this person brought, like, a doubling season Planeswalker deck. And I was like, what a joke. And they won. And I was like, that's pretty sick. And so Super Friends is any deck that's a pile of Planeswalkers, right? Like, do you like controlling games? Do you want to control games with Planeswalkers? Because, like, and Planeswalkers just get better. They just get more powerful. They just have lower casting costs. These decks have become more and more interesting. You add in, like, Yorion to blink them, like, reset their loyalty, so you get to minus them once or twice, and then Yorion to blink them back to their starting loyalty. I mean, like, there's been variants of this deck for years. Like, you have those, like, Jenny style doubling season strategies. You have more contemporary controlling builds. Every time I think to myself, that's a lot of Planeswalkers.
You know what I have to say about this deck?
Ding. Called it.
All right, next up, Reclamation. So this is another deck that we sort of put together into several archetypes in one bucket. Early on, people thought that Wilderness, I mean, obviously, these are all the decks built around Wilderness Reclamation. We all know what Wilderness Reclamation does. It lets you, like, reuse a whole bunch of your mana all the time and do super annoying things like cast giant expansion explosions, do other things like cast mystical teachings. It's clearly more powerful in Pioneer and Standard, but also came up in Modern a few times. Started out as Sultai teachings. You got to do some interesting stuff with Nexus of Fate, and then you occasionally see stuff like with Teamer and other things like that as well.
That same tournament where I beat Spirits with a poorly played Blood Moon, I got kicked out of cash contention by someone playing Sultai Rec with mystical teachings. And again, I'm on prowess, so I should have, like, killed them by turn 3, but I didn't. So then once we got to turn 4 and they cast Reclamation, they just Nexus of Fated me to death. And I've never forgiven them.
I still think that someday Wilderness Reclamation will kill us all.
Lantern Control is deck 45. Remember the days of yore, everyone? Before KCI, when, like, this was the artifact-based deck people wanted to have something banned out of? Like, so, like, controlling your draws, leaving me with nothing of value to cast. Like, I think the most important thing when you're playing against this deck is know when to concede.
Yeah.
It's just like yet another deck where you're like, War of Invention, how can you be so bad but so good? It's like it's such an innocuous looking, ridiculous looking card, and you're like, oh, this card rules.
Yeah. Another casualty of Mox Opal, no doubt.
Totally. Okay, we're at the 45 break. Let's go to our next donators. We have, I believe I mentioned Zinta last time. We have Taiga Style, Drew D, and Blue Cheese.
Hey,
I think Blue Cheese's donation with a bunch of frowny faces because we don't have spirits in our top 25. Spirits. But thank you for your donations. Feeding America appreciates it, and we do too.
Thanks, everyone. Taiga, I see you. Shall we? Demir Fairies?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. So I wrote about this one because no one else did. Bitter Blossom, Ninja of Deep Hours, Spellstarter Sprite.
Is Ninja always in this?
I think so. Sometimes. It's at least sometimes in it.
This is like Bitter Blossom Control, right?
Yeah, the interesting thing to me about this is that this was always really, and I'm trying to remember the name of the player that played this deck all the time.
Right. Yeah, a player out of Japan, right?
yes, it was more Dimir control with a fairies package in it than it is a tribal deck.
It's funny you
So
should say that it's control, because I sort of saw it as like a tempo deck that's got some of these like cheap creatures. It's got a little removal, a little hand disruption, a little counter magic, but it's all very, very low to the ground. Little fairy sized doses of each of those ingredients. Personally, I would not recommend this deck, but like there are people, including this unnamed pro, who appear to love it. So more power to them. If you're listening out there and you want us to give Dimir Fairies a fair shake, I'm just going to tell you right now, you will have to pay us. Like, this is a $15 patron tier deck.
I believe it's Yuta Takahashi is the player who
that sounds
was playing
right.
a lot. I believe. All right.
Dave, another made up Dave deck.
I just wanted people to remember. So the next deck here is Naya Boom Bust. I just wanted people to, or Naya Lightsaber. This was a standard deck that was really, really big back in the day. And I just wanted people to remember there were moments in Modern where Naya was a good value combination because you got to play Bolt Path and Elspeth, Errant Knight, and Bloodbraid Elf. And it's just not like a thing anymore. But at the beginning of Modern, this was a deck that came up frequently and it was at the top tables quite often, piloted by good players. Good mid-range strategy that was just different than where John, it might have been outmoded by John, essentially, is kind of where it went. But
Where does it get the lightsaber nomenclature?
so I just kind of took that from the original deck designer of this was Mike Flores for a standard Pro Tour. And this deck is just very similar to what it was.
This is a Modern podcast.
Yes, but it's a similar deck with the similar cards once they went into Modern. But goodbye, not more. We don't need to talk about it more than that. Just remember, Naya used to be good.
My favorite quad sleeved all foil tournament winning deck.
Yeah.
Taking turns.
So I think this is a blue-red control deck. This is like, it's a mono blue.
Yeah, it's generally mono blue, although the pilot who is really well known for playing this deck, the quad sleeve guy, Daniel Wong, has done lots of different things in the ensuing years. There's been Teamer. There's been some other stuff going on with it as well.
Yeah, I could have sworn I saw a version with like, is it Charms? Maybe.
Yep.
Doesn't matter. The point is, it's one of those decks that like only one player in the world pilots it, and they always do very well with it, and everyone knows them for this deck. Shout out Daniel Wong. I love playing control, but control decks already take forever. So how much more time do you want from me, deck? This deck is too long. Next deck.
All right. Up next, a newer deck. Oops. This deck's pretty good. Oops, all spells dredge. So what happens when you combine busted mana acceleration with spells that do crazy stuff when you don't have lands in your deck? And you have a combo deck where the combo is basically cast the spell, right? Like, it wasn't a reality in Modern until Zendikar Rising gave us the flippy lands. And so these decks have kind of burst onto the scene and looks like they're here to stay, more or less. Like they're not taking over the meta, I think, but they're around and they're going to do something kind of broken for at least a while.
Cool. All right, up next, Saheeli combo. There's a couple versions of this deck as well that we all rolled in, because there's like the straight Jeskai version. There's a 4-color version splashing green. Here's my issue. Splinter Twin gets worse when you have to worry about supporting more than 2 colors. So until this gets a tool that's not only powerful, but maybe like actually broken, I don't see this becoming a very long-term tier 1 contender. And look no further than just the last month of Modern when Canister won a challenge with this deck and it got a little more popular, and yet still isn't so dominant and present that we feel the need to talk about it every week. So ban Canister.
Yeah, banned in Pioneer, but not good enough for Modern is like the TLDR on this deck.
Heliod Devotion.
Hey, similar notes on this one.
Yeah, so can I take 15 minutes real quick to describe in meticulous detail all the lines and combos and Magic Online tips necessary to pilot this successfully?
We got time.
All right. Okay, cool. I'd rather actually take 15 minutes to talk about why Magic Online needs to implement a proper combo loop functionality. Infinite life, infinite damage, is all you need to know about this deck, but the important nuance that drives people up the wall is that it plays differently online than it does in paper, and that is why Magic the Gathering is a bad video game, but
Yeah,
the best card game.
true. We did see some. So it's topical right now too, right? You guys look at Twitter yesterday. You look at Twitter on Friday night. All right, next.
I don't know what Twitter is.
It's a
Okay.
microblogging platform.
Next deck on here, deck 52, Blue Tron. I don't know what to say about Blue Tron. Really, it's just totally different take on how to get big mana out and power out giant condescends. Apparently,
So where Greentron is, I think we would describe Greentron as a tap out control strategy. Bluetron is a draw go control strategy, and that's it.
Cloud Post. Dave, this is another one for the true heads of Modern.
yeah, I had to get some more historical stuff in here. So this is one of the early banned decks, and since we were just talking about big mana with Bluetron, this is the original big mana deck for Modern, as far as I'm concerned. It was before Valakut was unbanned. It was before Tron really took off. We had the Locust lands, featuring specifically Cloud Post, that could make giant amounts of mana and play Emrakul. And this is another deck that placed well in the first Modern Pro Tour. OG Modern, that's right.
Okay, quick question. Help me understand. I've always had this question, but I've always been too embarrassed to ask. Why does like that land that taps for X, however many locusts you control, this isn't a deck full of locusts? What does locust have to do with anything?
So there are 8 locusts. So it's a land
Loci.
type. Loci, I guess. So there's 4. You would have 4 Cloud Post and 4 Glimmer Post, and Glimmer Post just gave you a life, but it counted as a locust. And then Cloud Post is a locust, but taps for mana equal to the number of locusts you have in play. So they make more mana than Urza lands do, basically, once you get a few of them out into play. So if you get 2 Cloud Posts and you have 4 total loci out, you have 2 Cloud Posts, 2 Glimmer Posts, then all of a sudden you have 10 mana available with 4 lands, which is kind of Tronish, but if you have 3 Cloud Posts, then it goes even wilder from there. So,
Yeah,
banned, though. It ate a ban.
I mean, I got to say also, the art on Cloud Post is so spooky.
It really is.
Spooky,
Yeah.
scary.
That's a nice one. I could see that like on the wall of a dentist's or an optometrist's office.
Have you checked your loci lately?
Is it Wizards? I played this deck once upon a time. I sleeved it up for the LGS, and you know what? I did fairly well with it. But my favorite thing about Is It Wizards is I love how much Shane hates that I love this deck. Shane hates this deck. He gets mad when I play it. Wizards Lightning, not a good card, according to Shane.
Nibble Obstructionist,
Oh, yeah, that was the real...
a card that exists. Nibble Obstructionist count 1.
Hey, guess what? That was in Bluetron, too.
I guess I typed notes for this one too. So another Oops All Spells decks. This time it's a Charbelcher one. I mean, Goblin Charbelcher was one of those cards that I think was what it was. Are those decks in Legacy any good? I don't even know. But until Zendikar Rising came out with those flippy lands, this deck was not possible. It's kind of like Oops All Spells, but this time the combo is cast and then activate Goblin Charbelcher. So it's like, this was another one of those decks where it's like, oh crap, are they going to have to ban insert payoff card here deck, right?
And I think it still waits to be seen. Could happen. There could be an enabler that gets printed that makes it better, or somebody could figure out a build that makes it work better than it does right now. And it is the potential to be powerful the same way that Neoform is the potential to do some really broken stuff. So,
Dig me off, keyboard cat.
all right. Here it is again.
The
Uro.
Uro pile.
Uro piles.
I
Just
hate-
broadly.
Man, I hate. Man, they're so hard to get rid of.
They are hard to get rid of. And the chat is going wild saying they hate Uro. Guess what? Here's the thing about Uro. You may remember that like 5 episodes or so, we did a little episode called We Did It for Science, the Titanic Power of Uro and Omnath, because all of us went in hating Uro, hating it. And we all came out changed from that experience,
Changed men.
and recognizing darkness inside of us, that we could love Uro, or at least enjoy it and play it occasionally and set it aside. But they're clearly strong, and they're going to be around for a long time. And so people want bans. Maybe it'll happen. I don't know.
Can I share my hot take? I want Primeval Titan banned before Uro.
Wow.
Wow.
All right. This deck is a cool deck. Another modern combo deck, Knight of the Reliquary combo. So you combo up. Knight of the Reliquaries, tap to fetch up a land ability with Retreat to Coral Helm's landfall trigger. And that untaps your Knight. And so you do that a lot. And then you make a gigantic Knight. And then you get a Kessig Wolf Run. And then you power it through whatever your opponent had waiting for you on the other side. Does this sound janky? It kind of is.
Doesn't this deck have a cooler name that it also goes by, like Nightfall?
Yeah, Nightfall. Yeah, because it's a night landfall. Nightfall is cooler. Definitely Batman vibes.
What a cool name for a weird deck.
Love it. What a cool name for a Bant deck.
8 whack. When you really, really have to cast Goblin Grenade, you play goblins.
I mean, this deck is a LGS All-Star.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like it's the type of deck that I lose to all the time.
You will always, if there's a 9-year-old at your LGS, you're going to see a turn 1 Foundry Street Denizen.
Come on, Shane. It's a much better deck than that.
Well, Goblins is cool. Goblins is cool because you can build like a fast one. You can build like a grindy one. Like the cards in Modern Horizons added like additional options to the way that goblins could be played. I mean, even Conspicuous Snoop has added ways that goblins can be played in a different way. So I think that's fun. You can go fast or you can have a long game. It's like, it's fun to have cheap aggro decks in a format, and you get to cast Goblin Grenade.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. It's good. Mickey in the chat just mentioned that it's a modern budget deck, and I think that's great. It is competitive. You can do a lot of stuff with it.
But there's so many modern budget decks now. Green Tron is a budget deck.
Well, it's totally different budget.
That's a different budget, my friend.
What? Who doesn't have $500? Get another student loan.
Wow.
Blue moon, I saw Stan standing alone.
What? I don't know this deck. What deck is this?
I don't know. Is that any good? Ding us
Stan's
off.
giving me the ding. I'm not doing it. This is your baby.
Blue Moon. My favorite control deck sometimes. If I feel like playing Lightning Bolt, Bolt Snap Bolt, Cryptic Command, and Blood Moon in the same deck. How do you do that? I don't know. I pulled it off a couple times. That was cool. Archmage's Charm, Cease Play here, Thing in the Ice. Used to love that card. Then it got really good with Izzet Phoenix, and then Izzet Phoenix got banned. Now Thing in the Ice isn't as good. Other ways to play it, Blue Moon. I can really just like stream of consciousness forever until I hear a ding. I'm just gonna keep talking about blue-red spells.
All right, another one for the old heads. Did you guys know that Doran the Siege, whatever, was in a Pro Tour deck for Modern a few times?
No.
Abzan Doran.
I mean, like Walls is a thing. Like Walls is a thing.
This is much pre-Walls though.
This is like early Walls,
or
right?
any of that kind of stuff. This is just like an Abzan value shell with Doran in it for powering punch. It really existed. I'm just saying this is like a 2015, probably 2013 deck. And yes, I am trolling a little bit with these decks, but it's important to remember it's not always the decks that we have right now that really helped define the beginning of the format.
Yeah.
There were a lot more green-white decks.
All right. Ooh.
Sometimes I forget to ring my own bell. Sorry.
Garuda?
Guys, Garuda combo.
Guys, Ruda?
You guys
This is
remember
a
that deck?
heartbreaker.
I mean, a little bit. This deck was something that people were complaining about, similar to Snoop, where it was like people complained about it for like 2 weeks, and then they errated the companions, and then the deck doesn't really work anymore. But I sure had fun losing a whole bunch of matches trying to kill people with with what's the Colligan and Garuda and Spark Double.
Remember when they had to like turn off Magic Online because the deck wasn't good enough or something like that? Like it was like, this shouldn't work as good against it. We have to stop Magic Online.
Yeah, there was a problem with it. You know what? Goodbye, Garuda.
All right. Green-white, Selesnya, Eldrazi. I can't think of a deck in the past few years that has had such a rise and fall as quickly as this deck. And not for like a ban or anything like that. Like, if you don't remember this deck, it's basically, I think it was Ryan Overturf who kind of just brewed this up after Stoneforge got unbanned. It was kind of a mashup of like Karn the Great Creator, Eldrazi, and Stoneforge Mystic into one happy contemporary nuclear family. Is it Bant Eldrazi? Is it Stoneblade? Is it everything? Like, it saw like some quick success, and then it was basically kind of gone, and other Stoneblade style decks seemed to take over.
Yeah, I mean, Allie Warfield piloted this to the top 8 of a GP, I think.
That's true. That's true.
Great results with this deck for a minute there.
I think she was in the finals, if not the winning team with this.
Oh, it was a team
deck.
one. There was a team performance too as part of it. Yeah. But this is a good deck. Was a good deck, and maybe it'll be back again some other time. All right.
Hey, we're at a stopping point. We're at a stopping point.
I'm gonna ding, and then we'll do it.
We're at a very important stopping point. We hit $1,000 in donations.
No, you're kidding me. Like exactly 1,000?
We hit 1 G.
How is that? How did we hit 1,000? That's so random.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks, everyone.
unreal.
Okay, hold on. So we have to shout out. So Grant donated again.
Wow, Grant.
Truly absurd amounts. Ben G, KZ also. Okay, so KZ did not even indicate in their message that they were donating again. So either they didn't know they already donated, or they just did it again and tried to be secret about it. So we appreciate all y'all. I really hope you can still donate. I hope they didn't shut it off after we hit our goal.
After you hit your goal? No, that's not how these things work.
I think that would be silly.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for helping us hit the goal. That's the end of the stream. Bye.
Yeah, should we just cut it?
Cut it off.
All right. Next up, we're getting close to that. We're closing out
We're
our
at
random
63.
75.
63.
And we're getting close to our top 25 when the chat is really going to get angry.
I can't wait. This is what I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to the takes in our top 25.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what do we have?
Hardened
we just talked
scales.
about
Oh,
hardened scales.
Hardened
Me again. Okay, hardened scales. So this is kind of like a late era version of Affinity that could create. What I like the best about this deck is it create wins out of nowhere. Like hardened scales gets you that extra +1/+1 counter on anything that receives one or more counters of that type, right? So you combine that with like modular, steel overseer triggers. You have all these counters being placed everywhere, and skilled pilots could make these wins out of thin air through weird interactions. And like, just like if the opponent didn't know what they could do, or they had the optionality to do, like they could just be like, oh, well, I guess I'm dead. Another Mox Opal casualty.
Yeah, I do think this is a deck that still has some potential to come back, but that Mox Opal loss was so huge for both Affinity and this version of the deck that I think it's just going to be it's going to be tough. But powerful engine still.
All right, Boros Equipment. This was a deck. Another Infect deck.
Boros Infect.
Yeah, basically. We call it equipment, but it's really a Colossus Hammer deck, if I do say so myself. And also, one time, didn't we make Everett play this on the Aspiring Spike stream?
Yeah, it was a donation deck, yeah.
Another Luris deck that actually kind of endured the companion errata because it didn't really require Luris to be good. Luris just made it, like, resilient. But it can still like win on turn 3, if not turn 4. So sometimes you would just win before Luris would even hit the ground. Probably dies hard to prowess, and that's why we don't see a lot of it these days. But Boros Equipment, part of me goes out to you. The new Nahiri didn't make it in there. I really thought it would, but oh well. I was wrong before, and I'll be wrong again.
Just look at that big hammer. Whoa. Oh my God. No. Not like this. Not like this. Oh my God. Don't look. Don't look. Okay. Oh my God. Phew. Quick recovery.
Wow.
We're back. Thank God.
Stan and I changed places again.
Oh, good. No, perfect. I was getting tired of you guys where you were.
Perfect.
All right, chat. Do we all look and sound okay now? It should be fine, but
Boy, you know what? I guess the internet doesn't like Boros equipment.
I don't like Boros equipment. No, I actually like it quite a bit. Okay, Grixis Delver. Not sure why I'm talking about Grixis Delver.
yeah, me neither.
I don't know why you're talking about it either.
I don't play decks like this, but maybe I should. Like it's
This is exactly the type of deck you should never ever play, Shane. Shane, anytime
Yeah.
someone tells you something is a tempo deck, you should go to another deck list because this is not going to be your thing.
I mean, it's just like Delver is just one of those cards in Modern that's never really been great. And okay, I'm sure people can be like, let's look at this, let's look at this, look at this. It's never been as great as it has been, at least in Legacy. And Legacy just sort of kind of supports this card better, right? So like imagine I post that meme of like the anime guy with the glasses with the butterfly, and he's like, "Is this tempo?
Yeah.
Like, is this what tempo is?" I mean, look, this deck has potential, right? Like, there's good Grixis spells, there's good creatures in those colors. I'm not sure if Delver is one of them, but like, it's like it might be more cute than good. But if people want to play a deck that they think is more cute than good, go for it.
Hey, shout out to Citizen of the Nation Nathan, who came in second place with Grixis Delver in last night's FNM. I'm pretty sure they went actually undefeated and just came in second on like breakers.
Yeah, like I looked, so there's a cool site that I found in doing research for this episode, and like it had all of the finishes of Grixis Delver, and half of them were Nathan in our in the Nation Dive, like our Friday Night Magics, that somehow gets populated to like MTG Goldfish. Ding.
Forgot my job.
Ding.
All right. We already talked about Kiki Pod for a second. We're going to talk about this deck for a minute just because I was super hyped when Vanifar got printed, and I think a bunch of other people were, for Vanifar Pod into Kiki combo, yada, yada, yada. I trophied with this deck,
Yeah, my dude.
weirdly enough, but this is a deck where if you untap with it, you win, but if you play this card, you will very often lose. And that's really all there is.
So, Soul Sisters, hello.
Hey,
Probably-
sister, soul sister.
Next to Helia, this is like the second best life gain deck in Modern. It's also one of the only mono white decks in the format.
Another
So-
LGS FNM staple.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this deck was ever good. Maybe when like Burn is somehow tier 1, you can play this deck. It also had kind of an uptick during the Phoenix era, and one time I played against this deck twice during the same MCQ. That's all I got. Isn't it also called Martyr Proc occasionally?
Yeah, I think so.
You want
What-
to have the chat go wild.
There's probably subtle differences, but we're not smart enough or in the know enough to care.
We didn't have space for all three of them in the top 100. But we do have space for 5 different Kiki Chord decks, so, you know.
Yeah, chat's telling me Martyr Proc is a different deck, but I'm going to ignore them and say they're exactly the same.
Yeah, like we care. We got 100 decks here, okay? Come on.
Sorry.
Tribal Zoo. So instead of Martyr Proc, I'm talking about Tribal Zoo, a pretty outdated deck at this point, but it kind of capitalized on some modern aggro staples like Wild, Nacatl, Curd Ape, Tarmogoyf. I mean, this is kind of like just our Zoo deck, I guess, in general, but later in the format, I guess sort of middle of the format, like you have just, you want to employ landfall creatures like Loam Lion, you play 5 color mana base, make your Nacatls and Curd Apes really strong, but it's called Tribal Zoo because you get to play Tribal Flames and deal X damage for 1 and a red, and that's 5 in terms of the amount of land types you control. So, I mean, I had this deck built, a friend had this deck built. Dave, I think you built this deck out because it's cheap and fun.
Well, this was the first deck that I actually played that I put Tarmogoyfs in. when I bought
No,
Tarmogoyfs on my
this is
journey
what
to
you bought
Jund.
Tarmogoyfs for?
No, I just was buying Tarmogoyfs and then didn't have the rest of Jund, so I built this deck first. And you know what? This deck works. I had a lot of fun with it, and it's nice to play Kurt Ape every once in a while, so it's pretty fun.
Which one of you is Telex on Reddit?
That's me.
That's you? Okay. Yeah. So I made a comment on Reddit that we're going to talk about 100 decks from Adnos to Zoo, and you're like, actually, Zoo's not on the list.
Yeah,
it's you wrote about it.
Yeah, well, I've had a lot on my mind the past few days in preparation for this episode. And the decks I wrote about are not things in my mind.
Fair.
Also, someone mentioned that that could this come back with the Triomes? You know, Aspiring Spike was playing a list that was kind of like a Jeskai-ish Tribal Zoo build that was pretty good, too. So right now, everybody in the chat is saying that I look different than they imagined. I don't know if that's good or bad. I guess we'll find out later. My deck is next. One more deck for me to talk about. I'm going to ring the bell.
Yeah. Eldrazi and Taxes.
Eldrazi and Taxes. Yeah, so we just recently talked about this deck. So I won't go too deep into it, but this is the one that grinds and gives you extra hand disruption on top of your Thought-Knot Seers. So it's a very cool deck. You get to play some Aether Vial stuff, do some other things, but it's just another iteration on Taxes around and the same kind of build that Thalia has. And I'll ding myself.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a terrible ding. Thank you.
Thank you. By the way, Dave, the pitch of the ding is perfect tonight.
Yeah.
You're
Tonight.
killing it.
I moved it farther away, so
Good work.
That was our nicest deck, by the way. We're up to 70.
yep.
All
Deck
right.
70.
We're so close. Next, Urza Thopter. So I believe that this was, in fact, the closest that we actually truly got to Splinter Twin after the ban of Splinter Twin. Not just because of the play pattern of like playing a control strategy and then you combo out, but it was also very truly dominant and like actually tier 1, if not the quote best deck in Modern for a given period of time. And other than Snow, this is perhaps the other deck that one could argue led to the ban of Astrolabe, but it also led to the ban of Mox Opal. And now, if you look at contemporary Modern, Urza is sitting around doing absolutely nothing, while the much-loved Mox Opal is dead and illegal to play. And I'm going to go out and say I'm not sure anyone actually won in that exchange.
It's too bad.
All right, this one only got here because I'm a host of the Dive Down, and this is my first Modern deck.
The chat is going to freak out when they think that this is towards the top 25.
It's not. It's not towards the top 25. This is just my deck, okay?
Yeah.
So, I mean, also, this was a deck in Japan. It's like my Canadian girlfriend. Okay, this was a deck in Japan. So, in order to make, Monastery Mentor a thing, this was like here's some cheap Esper spells. You get your creatures like Snapcaster Mage and Monastery Mentor. I want to make this controlling tempo-y deck, right? Is this tempo? And like I said, it actually did win some things in Japan. It won something enough that I knew about it, but it was never really anything in the States, if I recall correctly. But like, it's so fun to go off with, but it's so bad 75% of the time. It's just too slow. And this is like the first of my 3 sets of Snapcasters, I think. Like, so, before I officially gave up on Snap. So there's a lot of sentiment here. It's just not a card for me, but a deck I wish was for me and I wish was a thing.
All right. Deck 72, Green, White, Titan. So what's our Titan count right now, Chad? Is it 3? This, in my mind, is just kind of the Titan deck of the now. Right now, I think that it does a great job of using the card Elvish Reclaimer to be like a mini Titan while you're trying to set up your play into the bigger Titan, and then go. It plays Eldamri's Call to really get your kind of toolbox going, help you find your pieces. It doesn't expose you to the same type of risk that Pact does. And I think it's just a really good value deck, and I think the players like I personally, I think that this is a deck that like has a big up arrow next to it because I think it's things kind of keep going forward. There's a good chance that this deck becomes a long-term Titan deck as opposed to something that's just like for today's meta.
Oh God, I like the acronym, Dave. RWLD, Red White Boros Land Destruction.
That's about how much time I think we should spend on this deck.
This
by the way,
this deck exists. It's a thing. Every once in a while, you're gonna get blown up by this deck. I despise playing against this deck. It's like the meanest aspects of like land destruction and prison enchantment decks. Is there anything more frustrating than being locked out of the game besides like being locked out of the game and not having lands to do anything with? It's so bad.
Yeah. Nobody likes to be stoned, Rain.
74.
Bad twin.
More Kiki Jiki decks. You know, so this is just twin without twin. This is a little bit of blue-red control like Stan was talking about earlier, but it's also something that people keep coming back to in lots of different ways. The most recent version that I tried to play was at an Energy series deck. I think Stan and I both played the same deck where it was like a blue-red flash deck with Brineborn Cutthroat and Kiki Jiki as a way to win. Boy, that was not a good day for me in the old tournament boards.
No, I don't know. Kiki Jiki's cool. Too slow. 5 mana and triple red is much harder to cast than 3 and a red. And don't you forget that.
2 and 2 red, you mean? Yeah.
Oh, Splinter Twin is 2 and 2 red?
Correct.
Before my time, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Stan,
I have hopes that Brineborn Cutthroat's going to be a card someday that maybe fits into this, fits into like a blue-red flash shell, but Kiki Jiki's just never going to be the way it was.
Ding.
That's
right. All right. Our final deck before the top 25.
That did not make the top 25.
Number 75.
Dave, I was leaving this for you, and Stan picked it up.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
and then he, I think, left it for me, I want to say, possibly. But
I just forgot about it.
There was a time in the not too distant past, in the last couple of years, where Shane Beeps had changed his display name on Slack in homage to this deck.
Did I really?
Yeah, it was Shane, I'm a hollow boy. Or I'm
a
a hollow boy.
I'm a hollow boy.
And several months later, I was sitting in someone's living room in Denver while Shane traded away his hollow ones.
Was it my living room?
No, it was that person who made really good salsa for us.
Oh, yeah, my buddy. Yeah. Shout out to
right.
Gabe for his good salsas. Good salsa boy, Gabe.
And because Shane traded his copies of Hollow One away, I think that's why he didn't write about this one. And this is a deck that I have memories attached to because it sort of emerged in this era right before Is It Phoenix. It was a Faithless Looting deck, and I think people kind of forget that it was like the big discard deck before actual Arclight Phoenix got printed. And some of the memories I have with it are a brief period where it started to sort of take over my local game store. And that's when I got into Green Black Elves because it was a deck that could race and could block 4/4s with tokens and kind of shrug at it. I also will never forget this one Modern GP coverage where Huey Jensen was playing against an opponent on Hollow One, and the Hollow One player got like 2 4/4s out on turn 2, and Huey's just like head in his hands like there's just no way to win this. It's over. I should have played Hollow One. And now it's kind of a thing in the past.
Shout out to the Hollow Boys.
So I had this deck for like a minute and definitely loved playing it at the at a time when I was unable to go to the LGS, but we used to get together to play as like a big group of 10 or 12 people at the bar. I will never forget the night where I had an opener with 3 Hollow Ones and Burning Inquiry, and I played it on turn 1, and my opponent got all 3 Hollow Ones with my discard when we did the random discard. So complete brick Burning Inquiry.
Ugh. Shout out to Frank Karsten for their math articles, of which they wrote many times about Hollow One.
Yeah, Grant makes a great point in chat that this is the type of deck that leads to great stories. And, and maybe we can remember it fondly for that reason.
And if Magic's not about that, what's it about?
That's
All right.
Okay,
Okay.
so
resources.
here we go.
Card
Okay,
advantage.
so we're headed in. Okay, we're headed into the top 25. We're going to count backwards, 25 to 1. Again, this is an aggregate list, and Dave and Stan do not know the order of the list. I do, because I created it and I made these slides. Dave actually made the slides layout, by the way. Okay, I'm going to shout out to Dave. I just ordered them.
Also, real quick, there is some massive consolidation on these slides, because part of the thing is we didn't want variations of some of these decks to be out in the earlier part of this,
Yeah.
in this kind of like the wild area, and spoil our discussion about some of these big important archetypes in Modern. So I'm getting ready for all the comments
Okay.
where people are like, hey, we're doing a lot.
Also, we have hit our soft goal of $1,000. That doesn't mean that this is solving any problems, right? Like, 1 out of 9 people in the United States has food scarcity issues. That is a crazy stat. We are one of the wealthiest, if not sort of like, if you want to quantify, I don't know how you want to quantify wealthy, but in terms of dollars, the U.S. has a lot of them. Yet we have people who are hungry. Feeding America does amazing work to connect people with food. And we need to keep that going on, especially in 2020. Not a great year, putting people out of work, out of their homes. And the money that they receive is going to help people who need it. So if you have waited until now, please donate. And we appreciate it, and they will appreciate it as well. In between 60 and 75, my wife decided to give another $15. I appreciate you, wife. Thanks very much.
So weird that you call her that.
That's weird. All right, so guys, I don't know how you're going to do this. Like, I don't know if you're going to like click over to the top 25 notes in order, don't look tab, and just like sort of shrink it up.
You know what? I think I'm just going to do this off the dome.
He's going to search?
I'm just going to watch it.
Okay.
I'm just going
Yeah.
to watch you reveal these slides.
Yeah, I'll try to do that too.
All right, here we
If you
go.
need notes, we'll flip over.
Here we go. The content you've been waiting for.
The
The
25th best deck in Modern.
Okay. Definitive top 25 decks of all time.
According to us.
Definitive.
Obzon. Okay. Jund will exist forever. Obzon has had a bumpier road. Mostly because white is a bad color. Like, so, I mean, okay. So people who are newer to the format are going to be like, what the heck? Why is Obzon here at 25? Okay. So for a while, Obzon was the deck you played to outgrind Jund. But cards like Siege Rhino can only be so good for so long. Like, this is one of the only decks that I've gone to time with in my entire life because I'm not good at mid-range and Obzon is so slow.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things that's definitely more of a historical nod again, because there was a long time where this deck was all over.
It was everywhere. It was like
24.
like what the pros brought to the Modern PT.
Yeah, 2014, 2015, 2016 kind of era.
Wasn't it called like Little Kid Abzan?
That's a different deck. That's just like an Abzon aggro deck, which should be on our list of top 100 decks.
Could have been, yeah.
Also, it's pronounced Abzan.
That's one pronunciation.
All right, let's go on.
Wow, I thought we might give our top 25 a little more support, but I guess we still have 25 to go.
Hey, Adnaz, this is a good deck. This is a combo deck. The Other Storm. Dave, you didn't know how old this deck was.
I went and looked it up, and this is another deck that I was surprised to see was around from the very, very beginning of Modern, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is the type of deck that not only is it old, and not only is it a pain in the butt to play against, even though it like sometimes loses pretty hard to control, it just keeps getting better. And we saw Thassa's Oracle elevate it significantly, and I think we might even continue to see it get elevated over time as new technology gets printed. I don't know if it's better than Storm. That's sort of maybe player preference, up for debate, but this is kind of like the other Storm deck that doesn't actually use Storm.
And it certainly maintained popularity for a long time as well.
Ad nauseum's like the original, like the combo is cast ad nause, basically, right? Like, I mean, you have to have like a Phyrexian on life and play or something like that, but
Or Angel's Grace.
the spell is really, I mean, the combo is cast Adnos.
But here's the other thing about Adnos that I love. You have to make the opponent play it out because sometimes they whiff. Like they'll Spoils of the Vault and the wrong card gets exiled, and then it's GG for the Adnos player, even though it does seem like they're comboing off. So that's fun.
Absolutely.
Devoted Druid combo. So this is kind of our latest in the creature toolbox school of combo decks, right? Like, so this is the one I was mentioning before. The 1-2 punch of Vizier of Remedies and Devoted Druid was, I think, discovered like hour 1 after Vizier of Remedies was spoiled. So you get these two creatures in the battlefield together. Devoted Druid, of course, has to have haste or have been on the battlefield already, right? And you make a unlimited mana. That is good. Unlimited mana is good. Cast a huge Walking Ballista, cast a Finale of Devastation, get a Walking Ballista, why not? I mean, that's all good stuff. And there's a lot of cool backdoor combos like the Kitchen Finks 5 billion life or whatever. It's one of the decks that I've messed with quite a few times but never really gotten good at. It's just a fun deck. It's got a lot of moving pieces, got a lot of options. It's sweet.
Yeah, sometimes you can just put like an Azuri in your deck and like make your creatures infinitely big. What's that werewolf card? That's here. The human that turns into a werewolf. You know what I'm talking about? That lets you like.
Oh, yeah.
The
Watch Guide.
Watch,
Yep.
the watch guy. Ding. What's next?
What did I write about this? So, you know what was a mistake? A lot of cards in 2019 and 2020. So, this deck was basically like the mid-range control deck that got to use a bunch of banned cards in Oko, Mox Opal, and Arkham's Astrolabe. And combine that with like two of the best 4 CMC cards ever. You get your Urza, you get your Cryptic Command, and have fun, right? Like you get artifact synergies with cards like Gilded Goose, with Emery, with Mishra's Bauble, Engineered Explosives. All these cards are doing things that they shouldn't be doing at rates that they should not be cast at. And so like nothing in the format was really keeping up with what this deck was doing. Like Oko, who thought that card was okay, but those abs.
Oh, what is his regimen? Oko gets up at 5 every morning and sprints and does some crunches and then like runs up a flight of stairs, and it shows.
Too beautiful for this world, though.
I'm so excited for this next one, Dave. Okay, so
Is this what I think it is?
Tell the
This is
story.
secret deck?
Tell the story of this deck, Dave.
So look, this is gonna make the chat go wild. So this deck made it into the top 25 completely because I put a deck that nobody else had added to their top 25 list at number 5.
Yep.
And so I told them that I was going to reveal it on the stream of what this deck is. Now, Shane, I don't think you can remove my question mark without
poop.
Without hurting the stream, right?
It's still a surprise for me.
I don't know.
Oh, no, that's the wrong one.
Oh, let's hold on. Let's hold on. Let's go here and hold on.
Oh, I love this.
What is this poop?
Just get rid of the box.
I did.
What is? And click present again.
It's Delver.
You monster.
Now let me tell you why. There's another card underneath Delver, and that card is Treasure Cruise.
Oh.
Because you all forgot about the 4 months where Is It Delver was the best deck in Modern by a long shot.
Yeah.
And
Blue-Red Cruise.
Yes, a deck that didn't really get to make it to a Pro Tour because it got banned. Treasure Cruise was banned before the Modern Pro Tour that happened right after this. But Pat Chapin, for example, took this deck to a second place in Worlds. And it's really the deck or part of the metagame that led to Treasure Cruise being banned in Modern, even though we always knew it would be banned in Modern too. So Treasure Cruise.
Good
Too
work,
beautiful
Dave.
Never coming back.
You know, it's Modern is it's a longer term format than I it's hard to wrap your mind around it. Like I said in the beginning, I thought we were gonna have a hard time getting to 100, and there's decks that I'm still remembering where it's like, oh, we could have added that, we could have added that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Instead of having some of the other having Countercat on here, we could have had Bridgevine, for example. Anyway, let's go on to number 20.
Ding. God, love that ding. All right, Scape Shift.
Has any of us cast a spell?
Nope.
I've never cast the spell.
Well, so what? Scape Shift is an interesting deck because it comes in variants, right? There's control variants that's just sort of like win with Scape Shift. There's Titan variants that like power out Scape Shift.
Right, Titan Shift. Yeah, I mean, this is a Valakut deck. This was like, was this the first Valakut deck after Valakut got unbanned? For a long time, it was like the de facto Valakut deck until Dryad of the Elysian Grove made Primeval Titan just the better Scape Shift that also made an endless army of 2/2 zombies while burning out players, while producing every color of mana and spending it wisely.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is also, we wanted to include both the Titan Shift version and just kind of value Scape Shift. I mean, Scape Shift is just a card that's been around, and there's various different versions that have been built many different times through the entire history of Modern. Part of my vote that got this into the top 25 on my part was staying power just around the archetype.
Yeah, exactly.
Archetype itself.
It's just
including
there.
all the variants. And chat, this is what I was talking about when we had to consolidate a lot of decks here because we didn't want to do that because there are more coming that are various builds.
Yeah, like there's some stuff that's like, it's really 4 decks, honestly.
Right. Yeah.
You can guess what that probably is.
Because here comes the next one. And this one, I believe, is
that's
also
one of them.
going to be 4 decks.
Hey, prowess.
Okay,
Yep.
Stan, can we admit that we didn't really forget about this, but we were like, let's throw this in with Burn, and that just feels really wrong now.
Well, I was like, this is between Burn and Is It Phoenix, and that's why it, like, for me, it didn't make the top 25, and then Dave insisted that it must.
I think it absolutely has to.
It has to be.
With
It has
so
to
many
be.
different versions of prowess that have been floating around for the last 2 or 3 years, the power of Soulscar Mage and Monastery Swift Spear. Again, totally understanding that there are many different versions. There's mono red prowess. There's mono red Phoenix that was historically here. There's the red black shadow Rakdos kind of shadowy deck that's here. There's Rakdos prowess. There's blue-red prowess, which I had a lot of fun with over the summer. But basically, when we really looked at it, it was like all of these prowess decks that are built around Lava Dart, Soulscar Mage, and Monastery Swift Spear form the core of something that definitely has to be in the top 25.
I think the reason I didn't put it in my top list, and tell me if I'm crazy, but I feel like prowess hasn't necessarily earned its stripes yet. Like, it's been really good over the last year or so, but it just hasn't demonstrated that longevity that we've seen from some of the other decks in this top list.
Oh, I mean, I think it has. I mean, it's always like tier 1/tier 2, and it's been here longer than some other decks that we have on our list.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go. Speaking of other decks we have on there, Stan keeps signaling me because I keep forgetting the
Blue
bell.
Cheese is happy.
Hey, Etron.
I mean,
the other Tron.
I loved playing this deck. I will say, for the deck dive that we did on this, there was nothing quite like, powering out into Karn and then playing a Mycosynth Lattice, which is back when we were testing it.
Man, Mycosynth Lattice.
But this deck is still real. And for me, I kind of hate Tron, but this is the one Tron deck that I enjoyed playing. And so, loving this and also liking to play Chalice, I haven't ponied up to buy these cards in paper, but this is definitely the kind of deck that's on my radar.
Yeah, this is cool. This is a deck that got better when Karn the Great Creator got printed because it had horrible sideboard options in the past, and then once the Karn Wishboard got introduced to Modern, then suddenly this deck had a real plan with its 75. Good times.
Yeah, Etron's sweet. It's like it's such a strange deck because you're always like, how is this deck winning? And so every once in a while, it's like, hey, I'm going to be 25% of the top meta. And then other times it's like, this deck's terrible. And it's that's what's good about Modern. As some of the other decks we'll talk about, I think, are in the sort of the same bucket, as Dave would say.
Last thing I'll say before the ding, a deck with 4 Reality Smasher and 4 Thought Knot Seer should be very good, because those cards are insane, and any deck that can play them like on turns 2 and 3 seems like it would be a good deck. Give me that ding.
Storm.
Hey, my first Modern deck. I wrote that very impassioned love letter when we finally did a deck dive on Storm, and it's all still true. There's also Twiddle Storm, not as hasn't demonstrated its longevity in the same way that traditional Storm has.
And let's talk about longevity, because like Scapeshift and like some of the other decks that are on this list, Storm is a Pyremaster's Ascension Storm, which later became Gift Storm, was a deck that many pros were trying to break for a long time in Modern. Storm has led to the banning of multiple cards in Modern, like Rite of Flames and Seething Song and stuff like that, because it did so well in the first few Pro Tours as well. There were 2 Pyromancer's Ascension Storm combo decks, I think, in the top 8 of that first Pro Tour that I've talked about a number of times. But the deck has always been there, and this is the deck that players like John Finkel will come off of the bench to play in Modern or stream or do things like that. Maybe not as much anymore, but before Baral, before Giftstorm became a thing, when it was really a lot more mathy, there were a lot of pros who loved to play this deck and try to figure out how to break it.
Storm's a great deck if you need a good reason to hold priority while doing other things, and that's why it remains powerful. All right, what's next? What's our 16th best deck?
KCI. A banned deck. Okay, I'm going to tell a little bit of story about KCI. Here's why I like KCI, okay?
You do that.
KCI was one of those decks that was around for a while. And Lee on Grindcast actually was saying a little bit about that an episode or two ago, where they were like, look, like I was winning with this deck at local events for months. And then you all would talk about this deck and be like, KCI seems like a little bit of a joke here. And then all of a sudden people realized how they could play KCI, and people learned how to play the deck, and some guides were written that people like picked up and learned from. And everyone all of a sudden was like, oh, we all can play KCI.
Yeah, incredibly complicated, detailed guides, YouTube walkthroughs. KCI took a lot.
And then enough people learned it, and it got way too good.
Yeah.
It's almost surprising to me that this is as low as it is. Like, I could almost see this as like a top 16, if not a top 5 deck, because what it did and the way it interacted with Modern rules was unlike any other deck that I have ever seen in Modern. Maybe there were other like older strategies that I'm not aware of, but like the way it basically used the mana creation, ability in Magic to create this game state that opponents could not even interact with while it comboed them out was so unique that it had to go. It was miserable to watch on coverage, really annoying to play against. Probably better off. This was a great banning, because rather than like hitting Opal or maybe hitting something that could still be abused elsewhere, they just got rid of Krark Clan Ironworks, and I don't think anyone's all that mad except Matt Nass. And wasn't who was that player who, when they won like a Magic Fest, they said WotC needs to unban KCI? Was it Canister?
I don't remember
that. All right, next.
It was Canister. Thanks, Mickey.
You got a ding. You got a...
Oh, God.
Up at 15, we have Dredge, one of my favorite decks. I don't really know why. I just think it's because I love flipping cards over. Dredge has like been perhaps one of the longest running graveyard-centric aggro decks in the format. And, if you want to mill your library into your graveyard with cards that want to be milled, you play Dredge. Like it fills the battlefield with creatures. And if they die, they come back. And you can play through removal, play through sweepers. I love beating Jund. I love beating fair decks. I love beating all the fair deck pilots at my LGS with Dredge. It's like You know what you're going to do? You're going to play against at least 2 fair decks of the LGS. Win with Dredge.
Shane, I want to tell you something about Dredge.
Please.
I'm not saying that I'm building Dredge in paper. That's not what I'm saying. But lately, whenever I've needed to like hit the credit card minimum on a small order from the LGS, I just like pick up a random Dredge piece because like most of them are dirt cheap and it's like a nice way to pad it. So I think like another year of this, of me buying like random like 20-cent sideboard cards and trying to put them on my card, like I'm gonna end up with Dredge.
You're there, baby. I mean,
I'm gonna say I am building Dredge in paper for someday soon. I have half of it.
It's so cheap.
Let's get the other half.
I mean, it lost a little bit with Faithless Looting, but then it got Ox of Agonis. I like that this is the card you chose, Dave. It's not the card I would have chosen, but it's beautiful there. Yeah.
I would have chosen the dinosaur version of Cathartic Reunion. Like, where Kibler hugs a raptor.
The hugging raptor hugs.
That's one of the weirdest cards. Next up.
Ding.
From my deck to Dave's.
Hey, I would love to say that this is my deck, but it's not really my deck. This is the deck I should not play.
Okay, this is a giant bucket. This is like this is Azorius, this is Jeskai, this is Sultai, this is what else is there? Grixis. This is just control.
Just generic control, too,
yeah,
we should say. This
so
is
no
non-miracles.
Stoneforge, no Uro, no miracles. This is like the super concept of this is, Plato's cave. This is the form of control, and we see shadows of it on the cave wall. All my philosophy miners out there, you know what I'm talking about.
How often is this deck good? I think this deck is much better. Obviously, it's much more about the players in the metagame, I think, quite often for control. There are good players like Aspiring Spike and Gabriel Nassif that can make this happen. You know what I mean? Basically, whenever they want to, with whatever version they tune to the meta.
Yeah. I don't know. Whenever Celestial Colonnade appears in a winning deck list, it's usually because of this deck, and there's always going to be like some contingent of modern players that are like, it's possible. We can still do it.
Right.
Doesn't mean you should.
This got huge, or the big boost that this archetype got most recently, or not most recently, the biggest one that brought it back out of the shadows was Jace the Mind Sculptor being unbanned, right? Like that was pretty big when that happened. And then later on, we've kind of gone on to other things. Teferi 5 was really popular for a while, and Jeskai, and then, recently we've had Uro kind of take over some of this in the Uro piles. Grixis had a moment where it was really good, thanks to a brew from Aspiring Spike where you could cast into the story, and that was sweet. And also, of course, Mystic Sanctuary is a card that has powered these archetypes in various different ways as well.
I don't know much about that card. Is there an episode of a podcast I could listen to learn about Mystic Sanctuary?
Yeah, I think it was Limited Resources episode 6,940.
I'll look that one up.
I want to make one last comment about Colonnade specifically. This is a fun Stan story. A few years ago, there was this big craze in the United States and the world called Bitcoin. And I was like, I'm just going to put a couple, $200-$300, buy some Bitcoin. I lost some money that way. And then I had like all this worthless Bitcoin. Didn't know what to do with. And then I found a magic shop in, I want to say it was in Idaho, that accepted Bitcoin currency. And I cashed out of my poor Bitcoin investment by buying up Celestial Colonnades.
Oh, Lord.
So like I ended up, you can argue that I spent like $200 to $300 on Celestial Colonnades by accident.
Wow.
Oh, Lord.
Onward.
Amulet.
Yeah. I mean, a deck that's we haven't played too much. Stan has spent some time playing it and playing against it.
Yeah.
But do you remember the first time you saw an Amulet Titan deck and just went, what? Like first saw the deck list and we're kind of like, how does this win? Why does this win?
Yeah,
How?
except it was being piloted by our patron and my friend Grilled Cheese, aka Ian, and he is an actual Amulet Titan master, and he was doing like that stupid effortless thing where he's like, all right, well, I'm gonna play this Karoo land, then I'll bounce this back, and then I'm gonna Teleria West, then I'm gonna find this, then I'll do this, and I'm like, bro, it's turn 2.
Yeah. I always feel like I'm gonna this is another deck where I always feel pretty good on turn 1 and turn 2, and I'm like, I'm gonna kill Azusa, and then it doesn't matter that I killed Azusa,
No.
or I'm gonna kill the Dryad, and it doesn't matter that I killed the Dryad, like something else going on. But this, I think, is this high in the list. It might not be the best one in the metagame right now, but I think just for the beauty of the deck design, the fact that it's gotten cards banned, and also the fact of how long it's been around at this point. It's been 4 or 5 years at this point. That's kind of how this ended up so high on our list.
Yeah, it's cool whenever a deck is so powerful that it gets something banned, and then eventually it comes back and is like still super powerful and a tier 1 contender.
Yeah, like the Amulet Bloom style, like crazy decks that like, what was that? That was Justin and Sam Black and those guys they just like came out of nowhere, right?
Exactly. All right.
Infect. So Infect, of course, at number 12, has been nerfed into submission. But at one point in Modern's past, this was just like a tier 1 aggro deck you had to be prepared for in some way. Infect is sick, right? Like if you get 10 Infect poison counters, you lose the game. So you combine these creatures with a bunch of pump spells and you have yourself a little stew going, right? It's always been a threat to those lacking interaction, but the problem is the interaction has gotten better and cheaper over time, right? And I think red aggro decks have gotten a little bit better. Fatal Push was printed. Gataxian Probe was banned. Infect still shows up now and then to like remind people that it has crazy amounts of power, and Scale Up got printed, but it's not as good as it once was.
Yeah, and let's not forget too that early on, if we just look at this as a broad archetype, this deck got Blazing Shoal banned as well. And so, that was a giant factor that made this deck a part of the metagame from the very beginning. Like Shane said, it was a solid part of the metagame for a long time, and now we're seeing it iterate a little bit. Last week we talked about Golgari Infect. Maybe that's got a little bit of a home here until Simic comes back, but this is definitely a mechanic and a core deck that has had staying power in Modern.
Ding.
Here's a big bucket. Death Shadow.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, this was hard because I've long been a person who said that Death Shadow is lots of different decks. Right? Like it's Grixis, and most notably Grixis. Grixis is the one that people were calling for to be banned at one point in time.
Yeah.
But there's the Rakdos Shadow deck that people are really into right now, which is that kind of like half prowessy kind of core. There's Mardu Shadow. There's also Jund Shadow. There's 4-color Shadow and Traverse Shadow and just all kinds of different versions of this deck. There's the really aggro one, Zoo, that had, the original version of the deck that had all the Phyrexian mana cards in it to be able to shock yourselves down. I think that, it was hard for us to have it be all those different archetypes because we were pretty sure that we would spend half the episode talking about Death Shadow if we did that. So here, number 11, just outside of the top 10. I'm surprised personally that it's outside of the top 10. I thought maybe it would have gotten a little bit higher from us. But
there's a lot of good decks in the top 10.
Yeah. So Death Shadow, a deck that I really like playing these days that I put a good amount of time into through various iterations over the last year or so. So here it is.
Yeah, for me and Shane, Death Shadow is the deck we love to build but hate to play.
It's a tricksy deck. It's rough. It's not on rails, that's for sure.
One time I walked into a hip Chicago cafe and Shane was just sitting there. I was not expecting to see him there, and he was playing Magic against our mutual friend Scott, and Shane was on Death Shadow. And that's a memory that I'm going to take to the grave.
It's the only time Shane ever played Death Shadow.
I hit the button.
Oh, we're on. Here it is.
Oh, dang. Is it Phoenix? This is the deck that I peaked in Modern with.
Okay. I'm kidding. That was for Shadow. Go ahead.
So, is it Phoenix? When we were talking about elves earlier, Joe in the chat made a comment about how Plague Engineer is what killed elves. But I want to argue that it was, in fact, Is It Phoenix? because not only is like Thing in the Ice a great way to beat up on creature strategies, but Is It Phoenix made Gutshot a tier 1 card ultimately, just because it was free. It triggers your third spell, it flips Thing in the Ice, it triggers birds out of the yard. And even though Plague Engineer eventually like contributed to the death of a lot of tribal strategies, what Is It Phoenix did to Modern, I think, was kind of like a line in the sand, as like we have this before Phoenix era, and then like Phoenix was this murky red zone that like Faithless Looting took over, and now we have this post looting era. And to me, it all starts with Phoenix. It was the first time I got to play a good Is It deck in Modern. By the time I got into Modern, Splinter Twin was gone. There were no good Is It decks anymore. It was post Delver Treasure Cruise 2, so I miss it. It's sad that I'll never get to play it in Modern again. Maybe I can play it in other formats, but we'll see about that.
Yeah, this is the deck that defined a podcast.
Yes, this is like the joke. This like every week we talked about Is It Phoenix
for easily, 2 months.
Someone on Reddit said, "We get it. You guys like Is It Phoenix?"
It was just winning. We couldn't not talk about it.
Yeah, but also we really liked it. And I really liked this deck too. Made me love Manamorphose even more than I already did.
All right, this begins a series of decks that I kind of wrote some notes for. So I'm just you guys need to jump in here. All right. So sure. Affinity number 9. Here begins the single digit decks. Okay. Named after a keyword that really wasn't on any of the cards in the deck. It's no longer a thing in Modern. Yet another Mox Opal casualty, and probably also just a rate casualty. Other cards got printed that were better. This was like the aggressive deck. Okay, like you put your hand onto the table, in like a turn or two, all these cheap artifact creatures and artifact mana acceleration. And then like with an Arcbound Ravager or a Cranial Plating, like any unblocked creature could just turn into like this lethal threat. And yeah, it's not a thing anymore. Affinity is not a thing. We had Hardened Scales Affinity in our bottom 75. This was a great deck for a long time. It was my first real Modern deck. And yeah, RIP.
This, for me, totally defined, like you said, the aggro deck in Modern for a very, very long time. And this is one of those decks where, like, as soon as people started sleeping on it, it would come back and win a Grand Prix or win a Pro Tour. It happened all the time. There were a bunch of players who were experts at Affinity, good pros, and man. Including
our good friend of the pod who doesn't know we exist, Frank Karsten.
Exactly, Frank. Yeah. Dr. Frank Karsten. Thank you so much. So say goodbye to a real one, I guess.
Okay, I gotta talk about this one more though too. Okay, Greentron number 8, perhaps like the just preeminent example of what big mana means in Modern. Greentron and like other variants like Gruultron have been around for a long, long time.
Oh, Stan flashing the Greentron.
Yeah, my man.
Silver sleeves. Right where it belongs.
Frustrating people with like that opening hand natural Tron and the Karn Liberated for years and years. I mean, it's had a variable power level, right? Like it's been sometimes awesome, sometimes just okay. Right now, I think it's in a little bit of a lull, but it's something you can always expect to see across the table from you at any tournament. From like your LGS Modern event to like day 2 at the GP, you're going to see some Tron there. It's not like the biggest brain deck in the world, but the sheer power level is unparalleled, and it's just fun to play.
I fell asleep a little bit while you were talking about
That's
that.
okay.
I'm sorry.
I'm really upset this wasn't 7, by the way. I should have just fudged it. I should have fudged it.
You should have. I mean, look, this is funny. This is one, I don't know if anybody remembers, but when we did a dive down on this, I walked out in the middle of it and just like left because I was like, I hated playing this deck. It's not my thing. But definitely recognize its power, and it's probably the Modern deck I've played against the most. Like I feel like I've played against Greentron more than anything else. It's been such a staple for so long.
Yeah, so while Dave was walking out because he had played against it a million times and hated it, I came into the episode with the same feeling. Like I'm not looking forward to playing this deck because I hate losing to it constantly, and then I finally got to pilot it, and I fell in love, and now this happened.
Artifact control.
Yeah, this deck rules, Dave. Eventually, you'll come around.
Is the top 10 just all decks that Shane owns and talks about? I feel like it's
No.
it's
There's some gaps in my knowledge here.
So what's the next one?
Don't look. It's humans.
Hey,
Number 7. Oh, I forgot. You guys don't know this order. I know this order.
we
Okay.
don't. Yeah.
So 7 humans, specifically 5-color humans, has been a Modern staple for like 3 years or so. Like you get tribal rainbow lands like Unclaimed Territory, you get Cut Sail Freebooter, and then you got people playing this deck a lot. I was of the opinion that this deck should have had a ban or a nerf. Like it was like 10% of the meta at some point. It was really crazy how good and popular and powerful this deck was, right? And it's fun. It's synergistic. It's one of those decks where like a certain top deck can just win you the game in a lot of interesting ways, whether it's a hasty creature or a reflector mage. I love the deck. It's been around for years. It's a deck like Greentron that goes up and down in power level, but it's going to be around for a while.
Shane, why has humans endured a post Plague Engineer modern so much better than like other tribal decks that also have lords?
I mean, it's a good question, Stan. Man, asking me a question in the top 10. I don't think it's necessarily the fact that like it gets hurt any more or less by Plague Engineer. I think it's the fact that Human just is better. Like overall, like it's better, so it gets hurt less, right? It's like the relative hit that Plague Engineer provides. Who cares? Like when I'm already so on the board, and I think also the fact that like you can Meddling Mage Plague Engineer. That doesn't like win you the game, but that certainly helps.
Yeah, I mean this deck is just so fast sometimes, and then other times it's just the right amount disruptive, and so. It's tough. It's a tough combination to beat, and especially if you're looking at what other tribal decks have access to. I mean, do you remember when this deck came out and just being like, "This is fascinating." The cards that are in this deck.
It was Ixalan.
That it plays Mantis Rider, and the fact that
is it the
Ixalan
Mantis
made it work, and the fact that Kite Sail Freebooter was immediately a staple in this deck to be able to supplement, Meddling Mage, which is a card that's been around forever. I mean, it was Chris Picula's invitational card from like 20 years ago or 15 years ago, and like to see that have life in modern again was super interesting for sure.
Any deck that makes you realize that Mantis Rider as a human is a good deck and not a
that
Mantis.
Note.
Burn. Stan.
Yes.
Stan, I want you to do burn.
Okay, I have some words and questions. I think, guys, is this the only deck in our top 100 that all 3 of us own in paper? I do.
Yeah, I own it.
We all own Red Prowess too.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's 2 similar decks that we all own. Burned. What a timeless strategy. I'm glad that it made it in the top 10. I think I would have been upset if not, because this to me is just like one of the identities of modern, both historically and to this day. It still shows up constantly. I love that it has like a bunch of weird nicknames and kind of like stories behind it. I love when people kind of talk about it as like a combo deck where you just have to count to 7. If you cast 7 spells, you've probably won.
Yeah, or fewer.
Yeah.
If not fewer.
This is the deck that like I bought and will rarely find reason to want to sleeve it up, but I probably should play it more often. I probably should play it on Moto more often than I do, which is never. But they're very good and powered up by cards recently. Spectacle did a bit with Skewer the Critics. Horizon Lance helped. Lightning Bolt's awesome.
Yeah, I love Burn and Tron as like these 2 ends of a spectrum that, although you don't have to be able to beat both of those decks to have a good deck in Modern. Like that's not what I'm getting at, but they're kind of like these tent poles that you can test innovations against. Like, can you take on Burn? If not, you're gonna have a really hard time. Otherwise, can you take on Tron? And it's like these two long-standing traditions that are both powerful, really in different ways, but test decks and like emerging decks. I think in like really exciting ways too.
All right, coming up at 5. I wanted this deck to be lower.
I think I know what it is.
It's Jund.
And in this one, we rolled in foil Jund as well as regular Jund into one.
And I had to use for the art for this. I just went all the way and I used
The OG.
Deathrite Shaman, which nobody here has ever played with, probably, or haven't had a chance to, but it is good. It was good, and it led to bans.
We should have put it at number 50.
That's where I wanted it.
We really thought about it being number 50, yeah.
I mean, Jund's always going to be there, right? Like, it's like the conceit of Jund and the reason people play it is it's like, I have agency. Like, I can have the right threat or the right answer at any time. Of course, this never happens. You get the wrong card at the wrong time. Like Dave said, it's been around for in a variety of ways for a long time. Like Liliana of the Veil got printed in 2011. Y'all, that's 9 years
Great
ago.
year. That's when I graduated college.
It's like, I mean, it's always going to be there. It's always going to be doing better than you potentially expect. It's going to be played more than it deserves to be. Shout out to Joe in the chat, But
I think the thing about Jund is it's a lot like Control in the sense that the people who are really good with this deck, I mean, there are always the people who just are like Jund person and they just always play it. But the pros who pick this up, like, you know, Logan Nettles, who always plays this deck in Modern and quite often does very, very well with it, no matter what the era is. It's a good deck in the right hands. And it's another deck that sometimes, because of the way the plan works, I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing whenever I pick it up. But
yeah.
Liliana of the Veil, one funny thing is that, you know, printed 9 years ago, you know, that means that I'm 11 years into my second stint of Magic at this point, which is, so I played for a decade, then I took off a decade, and now I'm in for a decade almost, which is a little more than what Magic's actually been around, but.
I did not like piloting Jund when we did a deck dive on it. It was cool that whenever I had to sideboard, I got to put in like 10 cards because every card in Jund is good. And it's a pile, right? It's like the value pile, the most enduring value pile, if there ever was one. It's like if a deck box was a thermos, Jund would be like a soup full of vegetables and noodles and bits of meat.
Campbell's Chunky Jund. Number 4, we got Birthing Pod.
Oh boy,
Dave, I think this one's you.
The good version of all the decks that we talked about earlier of, you know, the grandparent of basically stuff that would be Abzan, stuff that would be Kiki Cord-ish, stuff that would be Vanifar. Birthing Pod played value games, it played combo games, it played all kinds of different versions, and it was like a force of nature in the format for a long time, right up until the time that it was banned because it was too good. They all used a similar engine of, you know, sometimes we went infinite with Kitchen Finks, sometimes we did infinite damage, sometimes we did other stuff, but Birthing Pod is a deck that I never had a chance to play, never had the cards to play, never really played against it because it was quite an expensive deck, but I think it was defining for what Modern is and what people think about when they think about archetypes in Modern, because of the kind of value game that it lets you play, the tutoring effect, and everything like that. There's so many decks that are children of this one.
Yeah, I was not around for Birthing Pod, but Birthing Pod, it was one of those decks that was like still in people's memory when I was really getting into Modern, and like people would just sort of complain about it being banned or talk about it like, you know, in comparison to what other things were going on. And it was always like, let's unban Pod. Like, we should unban Pod. Like, it needs to become unbanned. And it's like, I don't think it's going to happen, y'all.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever going to happen either. This is one of those cards that's going to stay in the vault.
Also, this art is sick. Way to go, Birthing Pod, having sick art.
All right, people are starting to figure out the final 3 in the chat right now.
They gotta know.
They got to know.
Number 3, Splinter Twin. The other deck everyone wants unbanned.
I loved Splinter Twin.
I hated it. My gosh.
I played it for a lot. It was one of the. What can you really say about it? It was an early deck. It won the first Pro Tour.
And stuck around for like 8 years after.
Forever. The first Modern Pro Tour, it had Ponder. It had Preordain. It had other powerful cards that we don't have access to. And then for around 5 years, it was the definitive combo deck in Modern that basically led to what we think of as the turn 4 rule. Twin was allowed to stay because it really couldn't kill you before turn 4. And there's still nothing quite like turn 2 Remand, turn 3 Flash and Pestermite, turn 4 Twin Win. That's it. That original version of the deck that I talked about was very kind of low on interaction, which is interesting. It was kind of all in on the combo in a lot of ways. It had 9 single blue mana cantrips. It really was just digging to the combo, digging to your pieces. As those cards were banned, the deck started to splinter out and no pun intended, and adopt other game plans. You had your blue-red control version. You had Grixis. You had Temur Twin that ran Tarmogoyf, so you had an alternate plan to kind of go with there if you didn't get your combo. By the time it was banned, it was regularly winning premier level events. People were still taking it to Pro Tours. And I think that right before it was banned, there were multiple Grand Prix where it was 50%. Twin was 50% of the top 8s. Multiple times in a row. Different builds, but still interesting card. We'll never see it again.
Yeah, I mean, this is our top 3. I think we can focus a little bit on these decks. Like playing against Twin. Twin was a force of nature in the format. Like Twin was a deck that everyone had to keep in the back of their mind. Everyone had to be prepared for, and you had to have some plan to beat or like attempt to beat the deck. And it's not saying that it was too good, but more than being too good, it was too much of a warping agent. And that is something that I think we've seen come up again and again in future bans, where it's like, okay, whether or not this deck is too good statistically, it's doing too much to people's enjoyment and ability to make decks in the way they want to, or the meta to be as wide as it maybe should be. And Twin is the deck that I think about when I think about, that concept in Magic and Magic formats. Number 2, the original Eldrazi Eye of Ugin deck.
Wow. I am shocked that this is number 2, you guys.
I mean, I think we have some recency bias for number 1, but
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you guys are wrong. But let's talk about Eldrazi for a second.
I don't know, man. This was a crazy deck.
This deck was totally nuts.
Oh, you wanted it 1 is what you're saying.
I wanted it 1.
Okay. I mean, it's a bonkers deck.
Yeah.
Well, was there only one Ugin Eye Eldrazi deck? Wasn't there like a couple?
So this was the one that was really, really broken, though. So when Oath of the Gatewatch came out and the good payoffs in Eldrazi reemerged, specifically Thought Notch Seer and Reality Smasher, and Eldrazi Mimic was part of it as well. This was how people figured out to make the most aggressive version was the one that powered out a bunch of Eldrazi Mimics and then went into a Reality Smasher, basically, and then they just killed you with all your Mimics. There were people trying all kinds of stuff around this same time. There was people trying to make a version with Heartless Summoning to make all your creatures cheaper so that you could get the Eldrazi out faster, and Mimics and things like that. There were other versions that were built on top of that as well that were just kind of different things. But the one I remember really well, the weekend I went to a SCG Regionals was the week or two before the infamous Oath of the Gatewatch Pro Tour. And during the beginning of this regionals tournament, people were kind of like, have you seen the Eldrazi deck yet? Have you seen the Eldrazi deck yet? And then it was just kind of like a couple of people had it there. And then the next week it was like everybody had it. And everybody knew how good the deck was. And then it was just kind of like, that was it. But it is strong.
It's neat that this is a deck that when people think about Eldrazi, they don't necessarily are like talking about the deck per se, but it it encapsulates like a season, and they talk about Eldrazi winter and what happened to the format over a period of time because of this deck. What was able to play against it? Was there anything that had like a fighting chance?
No, and remember,
Affinity.
yeah, remember, Splinter Twin was banned right before this Pro Tour, and so this was a lot of people were kind of like, that was the first outcry that Splinter Twin should have never been banned because Splinter Twin could have kept. People think that Splinter Twin could have kept this deck from having quite the impact on the format that it did. But it's yeah. I mean, there's not too much to say about it. I never got a chance to play it myself. I got some of the Eye of Ugins together, and then they went up to $60, and they went down to $10, and then that was kind of like it. And this was all while I was home on leave with my first child, so
Aw.
watched it from the sidelines.
We ready for one? We all know what one has
We
to
all know
be.
It is.
Soul Sisters. I mean Hogak.
The
Hogak.
Gak. Okay, I'll go first. I haven't had a lot to say during the top 10, but I have a
I
lot
stole
to say
all of
about
them. I'm
Hogak.
sorry.
No, you did great. Keep up the good work. But I want to talk about Hogak for a second. And why I actually think Hogak is a better fit for the one spot than Eldrazi. Similar to Eldrazi, from what I'm hearing at least, like Hogak was near impossible to beat. And the thing that I hated about Hogak was that it was a deck that wasn't just bigger than like us and like anyone who's trying to beat it. It almost was like bigger than the format. And when we talk about certain other really powerful strategies, like KCI has this identity, or the story of KCI, I think you can tie to like Matt Nass, and you can tie the story of Is It Phoenix to Ross Merriam, Infect with Tom Ross, and like there's all these super powerful strategies over the years that we can connect to certain players because of how much they iterated on these decks, how much they made them popular. Maybe it's my own oversight, but like Hogak was one of those decks that would just like exploded on the scene in one version just because of like the hive mind ability to build it. It takes over so profoundly that it requires a ban, and yet it got better after the ban, and then it required a whole other round of bans. And say what you will about like Eldrazi, that took one ban, and like so many other decks, KCI, that took one ban. Hogak, like they had to like hit it in the knees, and then they had to like punch it in the face.
I still never am going to forget what we said about this card in our set review for Horizons. And it was like, maybe this will be like a two of and dredge.
Well, I mean, you can't fault us for not quite seeing the synergy between Bridge from Below and Alter of Dementia and Gravecrawler and all of the different Vengevine, just all the different things that it did. I will say, I had a fun time playing this deck on Magic Online for about 3 weeks, where it was just kind of like, okay, I had this deck in paper. It's another deck that I never had a chance to play because I already had Bridgevine, and then Hogak was good. I was like, well, okay, let's put it all in there. It was fun to play for like a minute, and then it got really old really fast.
This was the only time since I like first got into Modern around like Modern Masters 2017, and I've been playing the format pretty consistently like for the last 4 or so years. The Hogak period was the one time where I was like, I don't really want to play Modern while this is around. I liked playing against Oko, because at least against Oko you can play like a counter spell. With Hogak, like you couldn't play Graveyard Hate, wasn't good enough, exile effects weren't good enough. Like with Hogak, you just had to like out Hogak them.
Yeah.
A turn you had to win the dice roll and out Hogak them basically.
Yeah. I mean, this was kind of one of the moments where Mono Red Prowess was at its best, like Mono Red Phoenix, because people thought that it was fast enough, and I don't think it was fast enough actually for Hogak. So, oh well.
It's unfortunate that we have to end this top 100 list on such a sour note, because like I'm ready to throw my headphones at the wall and storm out. But
well, I mean, it's interesting because like I feel like every discussion of all of the like defining decks of Modern is going to end up with these 4 banned decks. It's going to end up with Pod Twin, Eldrazi, and Hogak, and then if another deck breaks through into that, it's probably because it's going to get banned too.
Yeah. I don't know. I thought that was a pretty good top 25.
Yeah.
yeah. I think this was a great 100, and I was paying attention to the chat, and people agreed with everything we said.
Yeah,
Everything.
every single thing they agreed
No,
with.
no one said that we missed anything. They were like, "Wow, this is really definitive and
It's
exhaustive."
perfect. Exhaustive and perfect.
Perfect placement of Jund.
Before we head out into sort of the more thank yous and such, I do want to thank more donations that came in towards the end of the stream. KZ donated again, stating it's not an error, and absurd generosity there, KZ. Trev and Joe C. Joe, quote unquote, Jund C. Also donated. So thanks to you all.
Yeah, I'm excited that we get to give so much money to such a great cause. Like
Absurd amounts.
The fact that we've started a show that gets to do this, like, not only do we get to like make a silly podcast that like a bunch of our internet friends want to hang out with us while we record it and like yell at us while we talk at them and mostly ignore them, but also like raise money for charities and like find new people to play games of Magic with over webcam that are like thousands of miles away. The hits don't stop in the Dive Down Nation. So I just got to say again, Shane, I hope I'm not stealing your thunder. We couldn't have gotten here without like the support of our listeners, our fans, and really the patrons who like your support for the show, your monetary support for the show, like makes it possible for us to pay an editor, which makes it possible for us to like work on this podcast a bunch.
To do the podcast.
Yeah, it's a vicious cycle. And that was all we ever really cared about. All we wanted to do was like make enough money that like we can just record the show without like coming home from work every day and having to like edit a 4-person 2-hour long show. And we mess up a lot, and there's a lot of editing that's required, but the patrons made it possible for us to kind of like have fun, and we hope we can give back a little bit to the nation and the world with it. So thanks.
Yeah. I don't know what else to say other than thank you so much for tuning into this weird show that we started.
Yes.
And we hope that you have fun when you watch it.
Man, streaming.
'Cause it's fun for us to make it.
Streaming
So,
this was fun.
Yeah.
This was fun. Should we always do live eps?
Oh,
I mean,
gosh.
we didn't mess up as much as I thought we would.
Yeah.
I think we could do live eps occasionally. for sure.
Occasionally.
Yeah. I love it.
Should we thank other people? Is anyone? Can I thank you guys? Okay, I'm gonna thank Shane, our executive producer extraordinaire. Without Shane, this show like wouldn't be out on time every week. It wouldn't be like as consistent from an admin perspective. And like there's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes when the mics are off that is so important to making it like good. And Shane, your stewardship has been an unparalleled. So I'm so grateful that I get to collaborate with you.
Yeah, we it's true. This show would not exist without Shane's determination and drive to bring it into the world. Because Stan and I are fun, but man, I don't, we wouldn't hit the schedules. We wouldn't.
I'm so
be
glad
thinking about it.
we're coasting now. Like I think we got to that point over a long time, but I said this last time we talked about this. I think is like, I think every project, you have to have one person sort of pushing it along for a while, and now it's rolling on momentum and inertia, and the fact that we just like doing it so much and like engaging with the listeners out there. So it's no longer a thing that's even it was never my thing. It's now our thing, and it's now the nation's thing.
Yeah.
Hey Dave, thank you too for being the creative director extraordinaire. Your vision and design skills like have elevated the aesthetic identity of our show, and like everything we put out, the stickers, the pins, the Twitch overlays. Like you've been so huge in making all of that, and similar to Shane's contributions, like I don't know if our show would have been nearly as good if you weren't present and like sharing your wealth of knowledge and wisdom and experience with us for free.
Well, you do let me come on here and talk, so that's good payment. And then, Stan, we have to thank you for just being the positive force.
Yes.
Keeps us happy, keep us engaged, and also bring a lot of content creation expertise, editing, storytelling, that kind of thinking to the table as well. And finally, thank you to everybody who joined us tonight, and thank you to all the listeners, and thank you to anybody who's ever listened or ever supported the Patreon and or sent a nice tweet or done a review. It all helps.
It all helps. Should I? So here, how about this? I'll wind us out. We thanked Tanner, right? One last shout out for Tanner,
shout out to
our
Tanner.
editor. Like, oh my God, we get to do other stuff while Tanner makes the show sound good for us. Consistent, professional, reliable Portland pod, taking over the MTG podcasting empire, one show at a time. We love working with Tanner, so thank you too for doing such great work for us for so long.
Thanks, T-Baby.
All right.
Okay, so here, I'll wind us out, and then Tanner, once I'm done ending the show, you can cut it, but maybe we'll chill and chat for like another minute or two.
Sure.
Yeah.
That wraps up this week's show. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to our podcast so you get the next 100 episodes as soon as they come out. We're doing the Netflix model for the next 100 episodes, so we're actually going to put out 101 through 200 all at the same time next week.
Binge watch.
If you use Apple Podcasts, please leave us a rating and review as well. If you'd like to submit a question to the podcast, put it in chat right now. Maybe we can answer a few before we sign off. You can also tweet us at The Dive Down. You can email us at thedivedown.com. And that's it. We're on Reddit too sometimes. Basically every week. If you'd like to support the show, because you haven't already, consider donating to an organization in our name. Feeding America, that's a good one. You can also support us directly through Patreon, patreon.com/thedivedown. Sometimes we use Patreon funds to give back to charities. Most of the time it just goes to paying our editor, keeping the lights on. You can also support the podcast while playing Magic with Mana Traders. Sign up for manatraders.com, coupon code THEDIVEDOWN, all one word. Get 15% off your first 3 months of renting Magic Online cards. Special thanks to the bands Nowhere and Spaceblood for letting us use their music for 100 episodes. Well, I guess there was one bonus
Like
episode.
98.
98 or 99 episodes.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the first episode or two, we had different music. And then one time for the bonus with Remy, I used Remy's music. But otherwise, like, at least 100. Plus, if you include the bonuses, that was a lot of free music we got to use. So thanks, Nowhere and Spaceblood, for being friends. And until next week, get out there and thank you so much for 100 episodes.
All right, I'm cutting.
Yep.
All right.
Okay, so
stop
you see a little
Audacity.
behind the scenes stuff. Let's see. Stop that. Oh, go away recordings.
I'm
There we
gonna I'm gonna try to find my cat really quick. People want to
Everyone
see
wants
the
to see the
cat.
cats.
I'm gonna go pick
Bing,
him up.
bing, 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 bing. Oh, that's all. That's the intro. The outro is.
I worry about Tanner sending him this one. 2:45. We're
I
gonna have to buy
mean,
him lunch.
Yeah, we'll take care of Tanner.
You guys
Tanner,
want to see?
we got you.
guys want to see my giant dog too?
Yeah, hold on. Mickey, thanks for sticking
Mickey,
around.
thanks so much, man.
Thanks for being around. I'm glad you didn't have to mod anything. No weird bots or buttholes got in here.